Welcome back, Hearthstone fans, to the Tespa Collegiate Series. I'm Robbie Waddles-Lang. I'm here with my good buddy, Jonathan Galestrom Owsley. And we have been through a couple games already here. We saw early on Rutgers take down Columbia University, and we just now saw that was the... Goodness, I'm actually blanking a little bit there. That was Michigan, I believe. They won. And, yep, totally. Ohio, thank you, production, very much, because I am quite nervous up here. But we're going to get into game shortly. We have the next matchup coming up is going to be, I'm going to give this a shot, L'École Polytechnique de Montréal versus the University of Maryland. Got a couple of interesting decks here, including ones that we are particularly interested to see, Galestrom. We got 2 rogues and a priest. Is that a paladin? That's a paladin!
There's a lot of interesting decks coming out here, Waddles. We have rogues for both classes, and then there's just a lot of deck diversity. We see a paladin, a priest, a warlock, 2 warriors, and a hunter. So really excited to see what these teams are going to be bringing out here. Today we've seen a lot of diversity with the release of Journey to Ungoro. So super excited to see what innovations these teams have come out with in the last couple days, only having a couple days to prepare.
Absolutely. We are going to see who is playing over here for the University of Maryland. We've got Zigza. He is an electrical engineer. Limespark, working in government and politics, and obviously, really like his name, he is studying physics. Definitely a lot of high-end stuff here.
Yeah.
Some very intellectual pursuits that these guys are going for, and they, as a lot of intellectuals do, look a little bored right now,
but pretty calm.
They are getting psyched up now to get into this game. So, L'École Polytechnique de Montréal. I am giving that my best shot, I promise. I'm not trying to make fun of French for those who actually speak it out there. That is legitimately me doing my best. We've got Brio and Emi Saihi. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that one. And Frank Shadow. All of these guys coming from the L'École Polytechnique de Montréal. They are going to be computer engineers, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, 3 computer engineers coming out, and then just a very technical backgrounds for a lot of the players here in this match. So hopefully we'll get the player cam, not the full team here, but we'll have to see if his teammates join him or if it's just going to be the lone wolf here today.
Yeah, and I believe that is Zigza. So Zigza going to be repping the University of Maryland today. Going to be interesting. Oh, yeah, no, I think that's the other team. So unfortunately, messing up a little bit here, guys. I am sorry, but we are going to get into game soon because that is going to be where we are trying to get to at some point during this broadcast. We have self-bans. That is going to be the Hunter taken out for University of Maryland. That's really interesting for me because they're leaving up the Paladin, which we haven't seen any Paladins yet, and Paladin is just in a very interesting spot right now. Mm-hmm. And over on L'École Polytechnique, they took out their Warlock, leaving up the Priest, which is another really interesting spot right now. We've got Rogue, Warrior for both, and then a Priest versus a Paladin matchup. I think this is literally about the best matchups that we could have asked for because these are some of our favorite decks that we've been seeing.
Yeah, no, this is going to be super exciting. Little interesting, L'École Polytechnique de Montréal banning out that Warlock, probably afraid of some of the aggression coming out of the classes.
You got that name down better than I do.
Murloc Paladin, most likely going to we see coming out here for University of Maryland. A little probably afraid of the Hunter. Fortunately for them, University of Maryland did self-ban that out. So we will have to see. These quest rogues most likely going to be, these rogues most likely going to be quest rogues. We might see Miracle Rogues. Those have been coming a little bit more in favor as the meta has progressed. And also we have the tried and true aggro rogue.
That is going to be very interesting to see what these guys are going to be throwing out onto the board for this matchup. And I believe we are going to be getting into that one rather soon. Yeah.
All right, going into
game number 1. Sooner than I expected. And we're going to get the Paladin into the Warrior. Looking at the Warrior list, this does look like it's going to be very similar to the last Warrior list that we saw earlier on stream. Maybe double Primordial Drink, but it's definitely going to be a higher-end Taunt Warrior with that Fire Plume quest.
Yeah, and more interesting, up on Maryland's side, they're running a Hemet Jungle Hunter with a very elemental-focused
Elemental Paladin. So this is not one that we have prepared for. This is one that I've even seen since Ungoro was released. So this is very interesting. I'm gonna hand buff, elemental Hemet Paladin.
So that's really interesting, and I really like that for a lot of reasons. The hand buff mechanic is extremely good for particularly understated minions that have large effects. The elemental class in general has very strong battle cries. You know, you have the Blaze Caller coming out. Getting that as a 7-mana 7/7 could just be awesome. These Tar Creepers having 2 attack on your turn could be very, very impactful as well. So we'll have to see, you know, if they get those Smuggler's Crates and you know, the Grime Street Outfitters into play soon enough. And here we go. First one's going to come out, get a 4 hand buff, and that's going to be a 2/6 Tar Creeper coming out on the next turn.
A 2/6 Tar Creeper that turns into a 4/6 on L'École Polytechnique's turn. I just see EPM, and I have to remember the full name, and it's, well, at least it's an easy name to remember. L'École Polytechnique. It's one that we practiced a lot too, so definitely good there. Over on that side, though, you know, you see that hand buff come down, and I don't know if this is a deck that L'École Polytechnique has seen a lot. It being that hand buff Paladin, this is definitely the first time I've seen it, and so it's tough as the control taunt warrior. You want to know exactly what's in your opponent's deck, because in control matchups, it's often down to a game of math. This threat can deal with that card. This threat can deal with that card, but they're kind of flying blind here.
Yeah, you see down there on the player cam, giving a little question mark as the Tar Creeper comes down for Maryland's Paladin list. So a little confused probably as to what he is going to be facing. But looking over at his hand here, we see what are the new cards? We have the Dire Horn Hatchling, 5 mana, 3/6 taunt with Death Rattle. Shuffle a Dire Horn into your deck, and that is going to be a 5 mana 6/9. So a lot of value there for the control taunt warrior, and it's definitely a tool that we've been seeing all of these lists utilizing.
Yeah, and at least one of them. I think that list that we saw earlier, that was the double Primordial Drake. That one was only running 1 Dire Horn Hatchling. But yeah, like you said, it is a fantastic card. I'm a huge fan of it, and honestly, I have not been able to cut it from a single warrior deck just because of how freaking cute it is. That thing is just... I just want to pick it up and squeeze it.
So interesting pickup here for Maryland. That's going to be the Igneous Elemental, a 3 mana 2/3 elemental. Death Rattles put 1/2 elementals into your hand.
Yeah.
So adding a lot of value into your hand that's going to allow you to get more value out of your hand buff mechanics. And when those come down as 1 mana 2/3s, that can be very significant as the mid game progresses.
Definitely. That Igneous Elemental is one that we were expecting to see at some point today. More often, I was expecting to see it in the quest road, because it does make it so easy to get all of the 1/2 flame elementals and just play them on curve, basically. But in the Paladin and in every other list, other than the Rogue, what this card does is it adds a whole lot of, like you said, the consistency to the curve. It gives you 2 1-mana elementals, and when all of the elementals are based, all their effects are based on having played the elemental the previous turn, like we've been talking about so much today, those 1-drops that you can throw in any point during your turn will just power up the next turn and make it very easy for them.
So this board over here for Maryland, double Tar Creeper. That is such an imposing board
double buffed Tar Creeper.
For EPM to be able to deal with. This Ravaging Gold is going to sit kind of dead on the board for the next couple turns. However, the Taunt Quest Warrior has this level of inevitability to it, where once it completes the quest, summons the 7 Taunt minions, it will get Sulfurous. That will give them the Ragnar's hero power, and it will just 2 mana deal 8 damage to a random minion on the opponent's side of the board. And that is just going to start chipping away at these beefy elementals over the course of the long-term game.
Yeah, that is a really important point to bring up because of, like you're saying, I mean, we're running into a hand buff Paladin. It is not out of the question to say that we're going to be seeing some very large minions in this deck. He's running Hemet, so you've got to expect a very heavy and large top end to be going in this deck, which means that Sulfurous is just going to get so much value over time. And it's really, it may be, if Maryland can manage to get enough of a board presence and enough giant threats on the board before that quest is completed, because those threats are not going to stick around once the quest is completed.
No, and the Warrior has a lot of ways to deal with a very wide board. As you said before, the Primordial Drake coming through. We see a lot of these lists running 1, if not 2 brawls, and I even encountered a deck list today where they brawled on 5, they brawled again on 7, and then on turn 10, they just dropped a Deathwing, and at that point I was like, well, I'm out of stuff. So we'll have to see, you know, how the deck list for the Taunt Warrior lines up for EPM here. But over on Maryland's side, we have the Hydrologist, a new card for Paladin coming out, 2 mana, 2/2. Battlecry, discover a secret. So Paladin secrets pretty few and far between now, with certain ones leaving. Competitive Spirit being the more notable one.
Right.
So Repentance going to come out here for Maryland.
And just a quick note for those players who haven't seen that Hydrologist, it is a Murloc, and that is why that we often see it in the aggro Murloc Paladin kind of variant. You just play secrets to really annoy your opponent in that scenario. To jump over to the other side of the match, though, Polytechnique Montréal. Gonna throw that out there as many times as I can, because I practiced it. I practiced that. They didn't get a great start to this game, and we haven't touched on it too much, but they ran into no early taunts, none of their Stonehill Defenders. That's the 3 mana 1/4 taunt that lets you discover another taunt, so it adds a lot of consistency to this list, and it helps out the curve a lot. But they have just run into the Alley Armorsmith on 5, the Direhorn Hatchling on 5, and utility spells, which is just going to let Maryland get some presence on this board.
Yeah, fortunately for them, they do have the shield block to combo with both of those shield slams. And shield block is a card that I really kind of want to touch on here.
Okay.
As Sulfuras, once you do complete the quest and equip the weapon, it does remove armor as your hero power. So you can no longer armor up and get value out of the shield slam in the late game. You rely solely on the shield block and the Alley Armorsmith. So good to get them in the early game, get use out of them as you can, because you might not be able to later.
That is definitely a good point to bring up, as this game does appear that it is going to be going the distance at least one way or another. I am so... Oh, there's one of those Stonehill Defenders. That is going to be a very nice pickup for them to just chain taunts. They need to chain taunts right now. They are really behind on getting that quest done. And when you're looking at a Hemet that possibly... I don't know if you play Hemet on curve. That is... It certainly makes your deck quite formidable, but there has to be quite an element of risk to this.
Yeah, you see them hovering it. They're trying to discuss among themselves, decide to go for it. So that's going to cut out cards like the Hydrologist, like the Fireflies. So some of those cheap elementals are not going to be there as we progress, but they will be able to draw into some of their larger threats.
11 cards they have in their deck right now. So they cut through about 8 or 9 cards there. That is a lot of chopping through your deck. Imagine if you could just run 9 patches and a whole bunch of other aggro cards, you'd have a really consistent deck there.
So what cards are we looking to see coming out the top deck of Maryland here? We're looking at Tyrion, probably Blaze Callers.
Oh god, they can't run Kalamos. That's a shaman. That's a shaman elemental. So that's not going to be in their top end.
We will have a second Servant of Kalamos.
They have Tyrantus. Oh, I'm thinking Druid. Why am I thinking Druid? Because this feels like a ramp deck to me. I've only seen Hemet in ramp decks, and so they've got me all sorts of confused here. So no, they're not going to be Tyrantus. They can't have. There's no quest, so there's no Galvadon. Tyrion, Rag.
Tyrion. Yeah. So Rag Lightlord is another really good one, and Rag Lightlord has gotten the elemental tag as well. So that's another thing to look out for. So Direhorn Hatchling.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Direhorn Hatchling going to eat the Repentance, become a 5 mana 3/1 Death Rattle. So hopefully he will be able to get that dead and find the larger version.
Get that dead.
Get that dead. That's right, Waddles. And find the larger version as the game progresses.
We are bringing such eloquence to this desk today, Galestrom. It is unbelievable. That Fireplume Phoenix looks pretty tempting to get that dead, and that is going to be what Maryland decides to do here. Following that up, the Aldor isn't going to get a lot of value, so the Igneous Elemental feels pretty decent here.
Yeah, so you've played the Phoenix, so that will trigger your Blaze Caller for the following turn. The Igneous Elemental, pretty good. If you do... Actually, that's another thing to bring up. Hemet has discarded their hand buff effects. So the 1 mana spell that buffs everything in your hand, as well as the 2 mana card, will not be available to them through the course of the game. So that Igneous Elemental going to be slightly weaker as the game progresses.
And of course that will be the only Igneous Elemental that they managed to find in this deck. Oh my goodness. So we're gonna have to start setting the storyline up now, because it appears that this game is going the distance, and which means that either Maryland uses their Hemet deck of giant threats to run completely over L'École Polytechnique, or L'École Polytechnique finishes their quest before Maryland can manage to grab a sizable position on the board, which sounds kind of far-fetched at this point, but if they grab that power, this game could very well be just over for them, because there's 10 cards left in Maryland's deck. So that's 3 cards and 10 cards, 13 cards they need to get through.
Yeah, so the Warrior definitely has a lot of tools to be able to deal with this. They are slowly but surely getting through their quest. A second Direhorn Hatchling picked up for them off that Stonehill Defender, so that is going to put even more taunts into the deck of the Taunt Warrior. Maryland, on the hand, just want to touch back on that Hemet play.
Ooh.
They do lose things such as equality, and so that will be, you know, generally a tool that the mid-range and the control paladins want to use to clear off these giant board of taunts, and that is no longer available to them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so we were talking earlier, do you play Hemet on curve? And I guess the answer is very likely, well, it depends. You know, if you're playing into a deck where, like the Quest Rogue or the Swarm Shaman or Hunter, you want those Pyro qualities, and I mean, if they're running Consecrations, those will still be in the deck, so they're safe there. But they want all of the control techniques in their deck. But in this particular matchup, they know the Taunt Warrior isn't going to be throwing out massive boards, and largely they're going to be able to keep up with it. I want to touch a little bit on this Elise the Trailblazer. That's that 5-mana card up there in University of Maryland's hand. It's a 5/5 body, so good, pretty decent stat line there, just under a Pit Fighter. And it shuffles a Ungoro pack, a sealed Journey to Ungoro pack into your deck for you to draw at any given point. Terrible to play before Hemet, and you draw that pack, but amazing to play after Hemet.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. That Journey to Ungoro pack could just give them the longevity that they need in order to get back into this game, because right now they are very solidly ahead on the board, but with Execute, Sleep with the Fishes available to the Control Warrior, it's going to be very hard for them to push through that damage, because they are sitting at a very comfortable life total.
They are 27 is quite healthy. Both of these guys, again, this game is going to be going a little long, and I'm very curious to see as to where the tempo comes through. The Ragnaros Lightlord makes his appearance, and it is golden, so it looks very, very pretty up there. The one Ragnaros that is allowed to still be in standard play, they are going to drop that one down. They saw the Execute last turn. The chances of there being another large minion removal in EPM's hand is not too likely.
Yeah, you've seen both shield blocks, or sorry, shield slams, and you've seen one of the Executes.
Yep.
So, but Brawl coming into the hands of the Control Warrior, not great on the very small board that is shown right here, but could be good if Maryland decides to go wide on the board to try to make a large push later down the road.
And the nice part about this Brawl is that it's fairly low risk. You're not giving up giant minions on your side, so the opportunity cost you're giving up if you don't get one of your minions is rather low. There's just that 25% chance that it leaves the Ragnaros Lightlord. That is the risk involved in playing that card right now. So we see the decision.
Very true, but the downside to that is you can't develop anything with this turn. You would play Brawl, you would Hero Power, and then you would have to pass. I have to imagine the Direhorn Hatchling, it's going to be very important to get that Death Rattle on the board, get a little bit closer to your quest, and put more taunts into your deck to try to finish the quest up as quickly as possible.
That does make a lot of sense, and even though that Ragnaros is going to be dealing 8 healing of damage to Paladin's face every turn, EPM is just going to try and play the slow game here. So
a little curious.
They did not develop.
Yeah, a little curious that they decided not to develop the Direhorn Hatchling.
Or I guess he decided not to develop.
Very true, very true, very true. So, a couple of reasons why that might be, trying to play around potential AoEs, I guess. But, I mean, like we said, equality is gone.
Right.
So, you know, we'll have to see how that pans out. Maybe he just wants to drop it after the Brawl or with the Brawl on the following turn.
Okay.
So
okay, that makes a lot of sense. You're gonna have 10 mana next turn. You have the opportunity to Direhorn Hatchling and Brawl, so it really mitigates the downside of the random proccing not getting the right Brawl. Oh my goodness, those are some very, very high value elementals to throw into this deck right now.
A lot of choices here for Maryland. Ozruk and Ragnaros Lightlord. So one of the interesting parts that the Servant of Kalamos is in the Paladin deck is that because discovering a card gives you a higher chance of finding a class legendary.
Right.
Or sorry, a class card.
Yeah.
Ragnaros, the Lightlord being the only elemental.
Oh my goodness, that is so good.
Gives you a very high likelihood that you will find him, and that's going to make it very, very good against aggro decks because you're guaranteed to get a lot of healing over the course of the game.
Oh man.
They choose to go with the Ozruk, and I have to imagine that's because they had the two Flame Elementals in their hand. They will be able to get that fairly sizable, and having already seen one Execute, it's very likely that they won't be able to clear it.
Yeah, like you said, we've seen 2 shield slams, we've seen 1 execute. So at that point, L'École Polytechnique needs to make a decision. Do I take care of Ragnaros Lightlord, or do I take care of Osric, who's going to be pretty much a 5/15, I think, next turn? That's a almost impossible decision, but yeah, we do have to talk about that Dirty Rat pull. 4 minions in Maryland's deck means the chances of getting a singular one are not great, but if it pulls Osric, that could be a huge blow here. It does not. That is going to be the Flame Elemental. Oh, does Osric say play or summon?
It says play specifically.
Okay.
So, yeah, so
because otherwise, if it said summon, Dirty Rat would have kind of been a really unfortunate play there.
Well, it's also play on your... Wow, Ragnaros the Light Lord going to win the brawl, and that is going to be absolutely huge here. And the emotes coming out. That is a huge blow here for the Control Warrior, and Happy New Year, champion. The new emote celebrating the Year of the Mammoth coming out.
Rubbing in a little bit there. Maryland getting out a little bit of fun. They know they're in a great position, and they know that L'École Polytechnique cannot deal with both of their threats until they complete their quest, which they are nowhere near right now.
So being able to play both these taunts will bring them 6 out of 7, but they need a taunt in the next couple cards. Their deck looks pretty thin at this point, so we'll have to see. The Direhorn Hatchling does have the potential to put another taunt into the deck, but with 13 cards,
odds aren't great.
Yeah, no, odds aren't great. Either he didn't put a ton of taunts in the deck, and where he's just running a large amount of removal and is, using these Stonehill Defenders and Direhorn Hatchlings to get recurring value off of taunts, or all the taunts are at the bottom of his deck. So a little unfortunate if the latter is the case.
So the I had a point there. Forgot, so we're gonna move on. This board presence is still going to be super, super solid for Maryland here. Oh, okay. I guess the point I was going to bring up was just that, I said nowhere near completing that quest. It was a bit of a hyperbole. They're at 6 out of 7 after they played both of those taunts. So not nowhere near, but definitely not in the position that they want to be in. Like you said, that's a lot of taunts missing. That's at least a Primordial Drake. That's at least maybe... I don't know if they're running 2 Armor Smiths, but probably another Stonehill Defender in there as well, which is, again, a super important tool in this deck for consistency.
So 1 brawl down here for the Control Warrior, and Maryland has to decide, do we overextend into the board into the second brawl? They have seen that 1 card kind of float in the hand for a while. It could very well be the second brawl.
There is a second Alley Armor
It could potentially be the second Execute. So there's a couple key cards that they need to discuss before they decide to go wide on the board. But here we go.
Here we go. This game just basically started right over with a whole new set of win conditions for both players, and this is going to be very interesting to see how Maryland decides to try to pull this one out. It's tough to say, honestly, with this board, who is ahead right now. So Osric is going to take 2 procs of Sulfure's, of Ragnaros power. The Spike Ridge Steed is going to make that even tougher for him. It's going to bring Ragnaros Lightlord, if he heals himself, out of range of the Ragnaros.
Spike Ridge Steed, a very, very solid card coming out for Paladin. A lot of people, when they were doing their reviews, weren't sure whether that card was going to see play, because a lot of people were expecting the Paladin quest to be very popular. And the 6 mana buff of minion is a little too slow for the aggressive lists that want to be running the Paladin quest. But here, in a more mid-range and control-centric list, Spike Ridge Steed is an absolutely phenomenal card.
Oh my goodness. This is... EPM needs a super solid draw here of... I don't even know if the Execute does it. They're going to need a brawl. Oh, okay. So we have to keep in mind that 2 of these minions are above 8 health, and that Ragnaros hero power is not going to be doing nearly as much in this matchup as I was kind of thinking it was going to. I saw an out for L'École Polytechnique. You get that hero power, and if Maryland can't build the board up the way they have, you can kind of run over that just hero power turn after turn. They can't summon too many minions with 5 cards left in their deck-ish. So, but Maryland has way too solid of a board position now. It's going to be a tough task for EPM to clear it out.
So Primordial Drake picked up probably one of the better drops in this situation, being able to combo with that Sleep with the Fishes that has been sitting dead in EPM's hand for so long.
Yep.
Tyrion coming into the hand of Maryland here, and once again, trying to decide a lot of decisions to be made here. Do we play the 12-year Stone Shaper to have the potential, if we draw an Elemental in the following turn, to have that active? Do we drop Tyrion? That's a little bit weak to the Brawl. But
although, no, actually, 12-year Stone Shaper is not an Elemental.
Very true. Very true. Good
That is
point.
the one thing we need to bring up about 12-year Stone Shaper. It is an amazing 4-drop value bomb for 4 mana, 3/5 with Divine Shield if you've played an Elemental the previous turn, but it is not an Elemental itself, so it breaks the Elemental chain. If you are just tempo Elementals, you won't be able to pull off all of their battle cries. Dirty Rat is absolutely not what they are looking for here.
Not exactly, and we see a little bit of the downfall of the Control Warrior list, and it's that lack of card draw. We've been seeing it time and time again over the course of today, where a lot of these games come down just to a top deck wars. So Dirty Rat, not the card he was looking for, potentially weighing if he wants to be able to pull the card out of Maryland's hand and just get the taunt on the board. His life total is getting very low, as we brought up before. The hero power does not give them armor anymore, so they are sitting at 20 life, and that is it besides the taunts that they have.
And the hero power has a 60% chance to hit something completely not important. Either face the Divine Shield on Tyrion or that 1/1 Silver Hand Recruit. I think that has to be pretty much the game here.
Yeah, Maryland in a very dominant position. EPM, no outs at this point, and he's going to choose death, and that is going to be game number 1, going over to Maryland.
Paladin. Paladin grabs a win. That is something I did not think necessarily that I was going to be saying today. So that is really cool that we managed to see that.
Yeah, and they look pretty excited here, and I would be too. You know, Paladin, a list, as you said, we're not expecting to really be seeing, and not a lot of Paladins being played on the ladder at the moment.
Right.
So very exciting for these guys, bring out a new deck and have as much success with it as they just did.
With the tough part now is that L'École Polytechnique has to answer. They not only have their warrior and their rogue, just like University of Maryland is left with now, they still have that priest, and priest is that's a class that you and I have some particular issues with right now in the metagame, except one priest list, which we are praying beyond hope that we get to see today, and that is Purify Priest.
Yeah, a couple different priest decks coming out here. So we have Purify Priest, Silence Priest, Inner Fire Priest. We've seen some Quest Death Rattle Priests as well. So really curious to see which one is going to come out here. Me personally, I've been playing a ton of Purify Priest. It's been a lot of fun. I've been experimenting across the board, and Purify Priest has just been the one deck that I've had just the most fun with. So really hoping that that's the deck. We'll have to see with the Control Warrior lineup coming out that last game. I'm a little expecting it to be the N'Zoth Priest and the Quest Priest. So, you know, probably more of a control-ish lineup coming out here.
And that deck has a lot of value. It's kind of like the Jade Druid of these quests. It's just going to take you beyond your opponent's endgame and kind of fatigue them. But our big issue with it is that it seems like that's the best thing that deck can do is just stall until your opponent runs out of threats, and that's not generally how a lot of players like to play the game. Yeah,
looking at a couple more of these deck lists here. So we have the 2 warriors and the 2 rogues remaining, so that will be most likely Quest Rogue mirrors. And the warriors, I'm really interested to see if University of Maryland decided to go with the Pirate Warrior, the tried and true aggressive deck, to kind of get them an edge in the Journey to Ungoro meta, or if they did decide to go with the Taunt Warrior, which we've been seeing a lot of today.
Well, we are not going to get an answer to that one just yet, but we are going to get a nice look at that Paladin list that we did see out of University of Maryland last game. A lot of interesting cards here. I haven't seen this list, so I'm just screaming it right now. The 1-off Spike Ridge Steed, that feels pretty good there.
So let's take a look at the 6 cards that we have up on the screen right here.
Why not?
Volatile Elemental, a really interesting card. They're running 1 copy of it in the deck, and that's going to give them a little bit of extra board presence and removal that the Paladin really lacks. So typically, you play something against Paladin, and they're like, oh, they can't really deal with it until turn 4. You got True Silver Champion and Consecration.
Right.
So Volatile Elemental and Fire Plume Phoenix, the next card that we're going to look at.
First time we saw that today.
Yeah, 2 cards that give them a little bit of kind of presence on the board and being able to fight for the board while developing minions. But the key card that we really want to touch on is going to be that Hemet Jungle Hunter.
Yep.
And that played a absolutely huge role in that game. Being able to knock out everything below the Tar Creeper in that list that you see there, and basically guaranteeing that they are going to see only large threats for the rest of the game. So really excited. A lot of people trying to figure out how Hemet is going to fit into the Journey to Un'Goro meta, and I think they've done a fantastic job fitting it in here. So just a couple other cards. We saw the Elise the Trailblazer and the Un'Goro pack. A little sad we didn't get to see the Un'Goro pack.
Yeah.
Opened live on the stream. So.
But at least did help secure that victory, and it added,
yes.
That could easily be one of the reasons that we saw that concede in the end. Just there's so much value left in the deck. How are you going to get through it all? And the one thing I guess we did notice is we were talking about the control elements of that deck, of the Paladin deck, but there weren't any. That was all minions.
Very interesting. You do have the hand buff mechanic, so we did not see things like Equality and Consecrations coming out. So Hemet, would have removed some of those early tools. So a little interesting to see, and I'd like to see the progression of that Paladin list as the weeks progress.
All right, so we are going to be moving into game number 2. Looks like that is going to be right now, and we're going to get a warrior-on-warrior slugfest, an armor fest here. And it looks like both of these guys are looking to go the distance. Double Dirty Rat and Execute means that we're going to be seeing, I think, pretty similar lists between these two teams.
Yeah, Control Warrior Mirror, and not the Control Warrior Mirror of old, where we just used to see armor up into armor up until the Justicards hit the board, and then it was tank up into tank up. And those games could go on for ages. So I'm really curious to see what the pace of the new Warrior Mirror is going to look like. Both players starting with that Fire Plume's Heart in their opening hand.
Oh boy.
And going to look to see who gets Sulfuras first.
All right, I'm looking at that Stonehill Defender in Maryland's hand, because I think that is going to be the key to this entire mirror match. When you get that early taunt, so you're ahead in the taunt count, you get the free taunt to your hand, and then you start adding value to your hand and get that quest done before your opponent, and I think that is going to be the absolute deciding factor in this game, is who gets that quest first.
Similar hands coming out for both of these players. We have the Ravaging Ghoul in both hands, and a little bit of just general removal and small minions for both of these players here. Tar Creeper coming into the hand of Maryland. So we'll have to see. They have a myriad of options to coin out a 3-drop or develop that Fiery War Axe.
What kind of stuff are you pulling with a Dirty Rat from this deck? Primordial Drakes.
A lot of large taunts.
A lot of large taunts. So yeah, not feeling like a great drop right now. They got a couple 3-drops though they can coin into, and that feels pretty good. Yeah,
and that also kind of saves and hides the information of the Fiery War Axe. Turn 3,
right?
Typically you're going to see that Acolyte of Pain or the Ravaging Ghoul, both of which are in the hand of EPM here. So
yeah, passing on a Fiery War Axe play when you have it in hand on 2 is very unorthodox. It's generally just a very solid play to equip that. In this matchup, you wouldn't swing. You would just hold on to it for value, but looks like they are going to just play, save their coin, continue to tempo out, and the reason that this play can work out a lot better is if they draw a 5-mana minion, which there are a lot of in that deck, Alley Armorsmiths, the Direhorn Hatchling, those are important. If they draw one of those, that coin is going to be able to get that out a turn earlier and help their curve out quite a lot.
Yeah, and not only can they just draw into them, you can also discover them off of the Stonehill Defender.
Right.
So
oh my gosh, yeah, and that's such a good chance, because Alley Armorsmith and Direhorn Hatchlings are both class taunts for Warrior.
Yeah.
So they have that 400% increased drop rate on discovers.
Yeah, and as we said, 400% increase, but the only thing to consider is there are a lot of taunts here for the Control Warrior in the class now. We have Tarlord coming out. We have Direhorn Hatchlings, the Onery Direhorns. We also have things like Public Defender.
Public Defender. So the 2-mana 0/7 with taunts.
So you can whiff quite hard on the Stonehill Defender. So I'm really curious to see how that card. And we see the Public Defender coming out here on the screen. So really curious to see what kind of options we get out of the Stonehill Defender. And Curator coming into the hand of Maryland. Very interesting. What do you think about that?
Curator adds a good bit of draw to this deck, and that's going to be a very nice. When you can play a taunt minion in this deck that also draws you cards. It's basically like playing a much better Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, so Primordial Drake being the key dragon that you're going to be getting off of the Curator. So being able to curve 7 mana taunt into 8 mana taunt / AoE and gain cards.
No beasts or murlocs, though.
It does run beasts.
Does it?
It runs
the hatchlings, of course.
hatchlings.
Those are beasts. There's a lot of beasts in Ungoro now.
So just about everything in the journey to Ungoro has gained that beast tag.
Forget about that all the time.
Yeah, but looking over the hand of EPM here, they've been drawing dead a couple turns in a row. We have 2 Executes going to be very, very strong later in the game, comboed with that Ravaging Ghoul.
Yep.
The Acolyte of Pain, which cannot be played with the Fiery War Axe on the side of Maryland. So they're going to drop the Stonehill Defender.
Need to get going in that taunt category for Leco Polytechnique here. So they got that Bloodhoof Brave, another good class taunt for Warrior, but not exactly what they were looking for there. It's definitely nice, but they were absolutely looking for a 5-drop here to play next turn.
So pretty straightforward turn here for Maryland. They discovered the Bloodhoof Brave off of the Stonehill Defender on the previous turn. That's going to let them play mana efficiently straight onto 4, and they have a very good trade into the Stonehill Defender here, and that's going to give the Bloodhoof Brave that Enrage, giving it, if they do proc into it, decided to kill it, but you know, if the Bloodhoof Brave does trade in, it gets that Enrage buff attack. Yeah,
that is actually very interesting that they decided not to take that buff just for the 1 point of damage on the Bloodhoof, essentially. Definitely playing around Execute a little bit there, but in that sense, when you're running such a heavy deck on Maryland's side, do you almost want to bait the Execute by pulling off that play?
Perhaps, and that is a very solid point. But scrolling over, we just scrolled over both of the quests for both of the teams, and we saw that Maryland is ahead. They are 2 out of 7, and EPM just got their 2 out of 7 mark.
Tied it up with the exact same taunts, too. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. Stonehill Defender into the Bloodhoof Braves for both of these players.
Talk about a mirror match.
Yeah, so Maryland's going to have a little bit more initiative here. They are running the Onery Direhorn in their deck, another beast that they can get off the Curator, so that is a lot of strong synergy there. So just have to decide for themselves right here, is it better to coin out the Onery Direhorn now, or do we want to save the coin for a potential Curator on the following turn?
Yeah, that is very tough. I think I'm leaning towards the coin out the Ornery Direhorn. Obviously you don't get to play Curator next turn, which does hurt a little bit, but the main draw of Curator is the fact that it tempos into that Primordial Drake, which is
a very good point.
So playing it on 7 is just naturally going to be a little better than trying to coin it out just for that particular synergy.
And they have a lot of flexible cards in their hand too. They do have the Acolyte of Pain with the Ravaging Ghoul combination, as well as that Tark Reaper to kind of fill out their curve whenever necessary. So going to decide the Onery Direhorn, 6 mana 5/5 beast, taunt, Battlecry, adapt, and very quick choice here. Divine Shield, one of the best options to get off that adapt.
Crackling Shield. I love the thematics of all the adaptations in this set. This is an Ornery Direhorn. He's charging at you, and he's got this like crackling shield of electricity around him that just eats anything you try. What is that?
It's quite awesome, and I have to say the animations and just the design for Ungoro has really impressed me.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere between the quests and the minions and the animations has just been phenomenal.
It feels like a brand new world for us to just go and explore the way that they really wanted us to feel, and I definitely appreciate that. It's a whole lot of fun. Getting back into this game a little bit, though, that Ravaging Ghoul feels really good, but you really want to combo it with a Sleep with the Fishes or something going on there, and you're not going to proc the damage on the Ornery Direhorn.
A lot of situational cards in the hand here for EPM. You're going to decide to go with the Acolyte of Pain and the Ravaging Ghoul. That will get them a little bit of extra card draw, remove that Divine Shield, and set up for a couple potential future turns. I have to imagine that he's probably eyeing that Brawl over the course of the next turns. Just, you know, the 5/3 and the 5/5 taunts, very difficult to deal with the single target removal of those Executes.
This is a little bit of an interesting card that we see in Leco Polytechnique's hand. That Gromash is going to be their high end and not a... Well, sometimes I guess a lot of these decks are pretty much running that Grommash. They're running so many Whirlwind effects, and it's just such a nice finisher, but it seems like a lot of these decks are just kind of being like, oh, we've got Sulfuras, why do we need a finisher?
Yeah, very interesting. I've seen a couple of these lists floating around. We have Grommash sometimes at the high end. We also have seen N'Zoth sometimes at the high end.
That's really control-y.
Yeah, the Direhorn Hatchlings being a Death Rattle, being able to get a strong Death Rattle taunt off of N'Zoth can be very strong.
Yep.
But we might see that if the meta starts to slow down a little bit. But for the moment,
it is pretty slow right now.
A little bit, yeah, but it can also be very fast. So, but a lot of these players trending to lean towards the Grommash finisher on top of the Sulfuras.
All right, so Maryland doing their best to make L'École Polytechnique's turn as awkward as possible here. Throwing down that Tar Creeper, just a low-ish value minion that kind of baits out that Brawl just a tiny bit more, but really doesn't hurt Maryland for baiting that out.
So EPM does have the clean trade into the Bloodhoof Brave if they want to take that.
Sleep with the Fishes could be okay. So how can we clear the full board here? If you Ravaging Ghoul into either of the unproc minions, and do we have any hand damage here? We do not.
So you could Shield Slam the Tar Creeper, or actually, or the Ornery Direhorn, trade the Ravaging Ghoul into the other one, and then Sleep with the Fishes would clear the full board.
So at that point, you're left just using your hero power for the rest of your turn, and it does look like that. Okay, no, he's going to save the Shield Slam,
and I agree with that play.
That makes a lot of sense. Why? I guess I was liking that play, but then when you consider that the only reason you're burning a Shield Slam right then is to proc a Tar Creeper, yeah, I think you can be a little less afraid of that one. So yeah, definitely smart to hold on to the Shield Slam for the big threats that you know are in Maryland's deck.
And the Shield Block also comes into consideration there. You do have that easy way to proc the Shield Slam and destroy a large minion like the Curator coming out here and like the Primordial Drake that we're expecting him to draw. And no, that will be a Deathwing coming into the hand of University of Maryland here.
Well, that was unexpected. Battlecry destroy all other minions. If you haven't seen that one, it is terrifying. Deathwing comes onto the board and basically says, why are you playing Hearthstone? I'm playing Deathwing Stone. Kills everything else, and if your opponent can't deal with it, basically in that turn, they are in a lot of trouble. So this is going to be possibly a game. If it goes long enough, we may see the finishers kind of dueling off here. And I think Deathwing's going to have that advantage over Grommash.
Yeah, so as we saw last game for EPM's Control Warrior, they ran out of stuff eventually.
Right.
You know, no cards in their hands. They were top decking. He was just found removal after removal after removal. And, you know, I bet there was a point where he was wishing, I wish I really had a Deathwing right now.
Yeah, or, you know, we haven't seen Curator in L'École Polytechnique's hand either. And that was a big deal that we were talking about, the draw of last game, because he just did end up top decking and wasn't able to find enough threats fast enough to compete with the Hemet Paladin.
So EVM going to throw down the Alley Armorsmith. It's going to increase the quest counter to 4 out of 7. Maryland one step ahead of them. Curator brought that to 5 out of 7. So going to look to develop these last few taunts here.
They could complete it this turn if they wanted to with that Dirty Rat and the Direhorn Hatchling. How bad is the worst case Dirty Rat right here? You don't have either Execute if you're running it even in their hand, so they would just be kind of dealing with it on the board, as it were.
So, you know, we can see Grom in the hands. That might be worst case scenario. Typically, you want to combo Dirty Rat with a removal spell, Execute, Shield Block, or Shield Slam, or that Brawl.
So not going all out here.
yeah, gonna take it slow and steady. And I really do like this pace here for Maryland. They are ahead. They've been ahead. EPM is ahead on the life total, but they have been playing behind both from the quest and on the board this entire game.
And again, they have that Deathwing in hand. It's one thing to have it in your deck and be like, well, I'll draw into that eventually. But no, we have it in hand. So Maryland, like you said, feels very comfortable playing pretty slow here. It's not glacially slow. I used that term a couple times when, you know, it's the pass rogue 1 into the dagger rogue 2. That's playing glacially slow. It's not quite there, but Maryland is definitely taking a slower course than they needed to in this particular, or than they had the option to, I guess. Not that they needed to play any faster in this match at all.
Trade's very interesting here. Just a wall of taunts on the board. 2 Direhorn Hatchlings, the Curator, and that Tar Creeper. Dirty Rat coming into the hand here for EPM. And a little bit interesting, if you do pull a taunt off of your opponent, that's one less taunt that they have available to them to play for the quest, because it is play and not summon.
Correct.
So, and they do have the removal. They do have the Brawl and both Execute, so it's going to happen. Ravaging Ghoul going to come out. Not the best target, really, here for EPM. Not really what they're looking for.
Right, so EPM seeing that basically a good... I don't know whether to call that a good pull for them. You know, if you pull that Deathwing and you brawl it, that's amazing. So I guess I'm going to call that a little bit unlucky for their side. But if that were the Deathwing, this would be a terrible situation right now.
Yeah, they do have the Ravaging Golem to execute for the following turn, so anything that did survive the brawl, they did have the option and the opportunity to be able to kill that on the following turn.
Gotcha.
Tarlord coming out here for Maryland. Very interesting card.
Wow. Yeah, that is a 7 mana. I believe that is 111 that buffs up to a 5/11?
Yes.
5/11 on your opponent's turn. So definitely an interesting card. A little heavier than I was expecting some of these taunt control decks to be going.
So Maryland, one thing to note, as they are one taunt away from completing their quest. That Direhorn Hatchling has to look very, very appealing.
Oh, but you could Dirty Rat into weapon into Ragnaros hero power.
That is very true. So you can also Direhorn Hatchling into weapon, so you don't get the Ragnaros hero power immediately.
Right, but you are still definitely ahead of your opponent in that pacing, and that, I said it, you know, a few turns ago, or maybe half this match ago, whoever gets that hero power first, I can't imagine many scenarios where that player loses the game.
And looking at EPM's hand here, what does he really have to contest the 8 damage going to be raining down on him turn after turn
He's
after
got
turn?
a lot of utility, but unfortunately none of them are going to execute a hero power.
And there's like Curator we're talking about that he really would have liked to see on the previous
so he is
game.
running it. Didn't see it last game, I don't believe, and that's part of the reason he was drawn a little dead there.
Yeah, just didn't draw the cards that he really needed to push through his deck, the shield blocks, the Curator. So we did see the Primordial Drake, so that does have, as we said before, a lot of synergy here with the Curator.
Right.
But weighing his options here.
Definitely weighing. I mean, there's only so many options to weigh. You have removal that you're at a healthy life total and your opponent only has 7 minions on the board. I don't imagine any of the removal really being thrown down this turn, so just going to be throwing in some value and trying to get himself closer to that quest. The Direhorn Matriarch is going to enter his hand as well. And I literally just said it last turn. I can't imagine many situations where the player that gets this hero power first is going to lose the game. But Maryland doesn't have that hero power first, and it looks like L'École Polytechnique may have just caught up a little bit. Yeah,
but that Direhorn Matriarch coming into the hand for Maryland is a 5 mana 6/9, and that is going to be a large threat. And that coming down on top of Sulfuras could just put them exponentially ahead on the board here, being able to get that Ragnaros hero power threaded in this turn, develop the weapon, develop the large minion, and Maryland looking very far ahead with the swing turn.
All right. There is a good turn back here for L'École Polytechnique, though. You throw down the Ravaging Ghoul into the execute, and the Direhorn Matriarch completes your quest with your last bit of mana. So you are putting yourself in a decent position to come back in this game really strong. This game has definitely come a lot closer than I imagined. Maryland looked like they were really pulling ahead substantially there in the I guess we call it the mid game in this long of a game, but L'École Polytechnique has managed to swing back in a very big way.
Yeah, it has been a while since we've been able to call the mid game, you know, around turn 10 with a lot of Pirate Warrior in the meta, seeing a lot of games ending here around turn 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, mid game, turn 3.
Very excited to see these games becoming longer and longer. So Fireplume's Heart going to be completed here for EPM, and they're going to develop that weapon, get their hero power, and start fighting back for this board.
That is going to be the play of choice for these guys, and where does this proc go is going to be well, I was thinking that was going to be a big deal, but he may decide to Whirlwind here. Interesting.
Going to the face, so that is going to leave up the Direhorn Matriarch here for Maryland, with EPM having the same minion there to protect him.
He threw me off with that Whirlwind Hover. I was trying to think of what does that do in this turn. Nothing this turn, so definitely he threw me for a loop there.
It does bring the Direhorn Matriarch down to 8 health, so that would allow the Sulfuras proc to potentially kill it on the following turn.
Right.
However, it does proc the Acolyte of Pain, so there is that double-edged sword there.
Right. Yeah, and of course you can always just, if the Ragnaros proc hits that Ordinary Direhorn, since it's not dying on that turn anyway, you're still killing it in the same time span. So definitely, you know, he thought about it for just a split second, which is why he hovered that, but then realized, no, that's not going to be the most efficient play in this scenario.
So the Die Insect hero power coming in huge here for Maryland's, being able to kill off the minion on the opposing side of the board. develop their own Stonehill defender, and a little weak options, but that Honorary Direhorn's going to be the choice pick.
All right, so taking a look at the player. Let me try that again. Taking a look at the hands that these players are having right now, L'École Polytechnique is maybe not in the best spot or as good a spot as I was considering. This board from Maryland is small, but it's wide, and that's really difficult to deal with the Ragnaros Hero Power. The Primordial Drake will only clear off one of them, not making their chances too much better there. And so they have to find a way to do 12 damage to face, either getting through all those taunts and a weapon swing and a Hero Power proc. But this board is getting bigger from Maryland, and it doesn't show any signs of getting any smaller anytime soon.
No, so we do have the option to Primordial Drake the board that would kill off the Acolyte of Pain, and the Ragnaros Hero Power being able to combo in there would be able to take some of the pressure off the board, or if it does hit the face, that leaves them at 4 life.
Right.
And that is quite significant, as they also do not have any armor gain outside of that Alley Armor Smith in their hand, so they would need to develop that and then start hitting face for 2 armor a turn. So a couple lucky Die Insect procs here for EPM could just be...
This is the play I was, just working through here. You execute both of the taunt minions maybe, and run that weapon. So, okay, this is the choice. Do you just take out the 4 health there, or do you go for game? He could have gone for game on this turn with a... It would have been a 1 in 3 Ragnaros Hero proc. Not the worst odds when you're talking about ending a game.
So Whirlwind and Ravaging Ghoul going to come out here. That will clear off the Acolyte of Pain, giving their opponent 2 draws, but it really doesn't matter when you're giving yourself a 50-50 chance to deal 8 damage to your opponent's face, and there it goes.
Got it. So this is going to be taunts or bust for Maryland. There is 1 execute in the hand here, plus a Primordial Drake to automatically proc it, even if that Ravaging Ghoul goes down. So there needs to be... What is that? At least 2 taunts this turn, which is not a impossible feat by any means.
No, they do have the option to get both of those Alley Armor Smiths onto the board, but I think they would like to get wider onto the board if possible, but the mana restrictions in their hand do not allow that. So giving you want to be able to pressure as much as you can and give the Ragnaros Hero Power the least options to be able to snipe you off the face. But this game coming down to a nail biter. Maryland's
the 1 health
sitting at 1 health.
Keeping that board, the 3-1 Ravaging Ghoul is so important for Maryland right now, and any damage, whether they were at 4 health or 1 health, would end this game. So not too surprised to see them trading in there.
So Honorary Direhorn going to look like the play here that's going to get them a little more presence on the board and be able to close this game out as quickly as possible.
And then they can go into the Bloodhoof Brave, and the Divine Shield on the Direhorn is pretty much exactly what you were looking for there. Makes it so difficult to proc with Execute. And he decides to put down the Hero Power instead of throwing down a second taunt there.
And that makes a lot of sense. He's representing 8 on board with minions, 4 from the weapon, and 8 potential from the Hero Power. So that puts EPM in a very tricky situation.
Puts the pressure on their opponents.
It really does. So this Primordial Drake plus the Hero Power, that is going to be a 50-50 chance for lethal. We'll have to see how it turns out.
We are going to have to see that. There is one play. There is one play right now. It is going to... An insect is going to die, and it is going to be Maryland's face. L'École Polytechnique with a couple of very, very nice Ragnaros Hero procs through the course of that game. They grab the quest second, but say, you know what, Waddles? It doesn't even matter that we grabbed that quest second. I am going to win this game off the back of that anyway.
Yeah, going to tie up the series 1-1, getting that warrior out of the way. So a little bit of floundering in the game number 1, but going very strong out for game number 2, and that was a nail biter of a game.
That was definitely one that went quite a while with a lot of swings back and forth. That Deathwing never came into play, but absolutely could have turned a game if it went a little longer and.
Not really the matchup that you want to be playing the Deathwing in. The Deathwing is very, very strong into that the mid-game matchups that we're going to be seeing throughout the course of this tournament in the next couple of days. However,
we do have a tweet from you guys, so we're going to jump that in here right now. Who is your favorite caster to watch cast Hearthstone? Well, that is actually a very good question for us because we have watched a lot of Hearthstone casting lately. We got to, of course, give a shout out to the pair on the desk with us, Cora and That's Admirable. They are a joy to watch. We learned a lot from them in preparing for this tournament.
They have been absolutely awesome to work with and to meet, and I've enjoyed every single second of it.
Definitely.
So Admirable and Cora, definitely great people, great casters, learned a lot.
So maybe a bit of a cop-out answer there for us. I guess I'll go ahead and say that of the other casters, we really enjoy some of the animated ones, but we're also big fans of Soddle's analysis, which is a lot of fun to listen to. Yeah. So if you want to get your tweet read out on the air, go ahead and tweet at us at Team Tespa, or go on Facebook /Team Tespa. If your tweet gets read out on air, we are going to send you that Dalaran Flame card back. It's going to make you the envy of anybody you queue into.
It is quite the awesome card back, and I enjoy using it myself. So,
speaking of the Dalaran Flame card back, another way that you can manage to grab this one for yourself is heading on over to compete.tespa.org /Hearthstone and signing up, buying your tickets to go to the esports arena in Santa Ana, California on April 22nd and the 23rd. This is going to be one awesome event, guys. It's $12 for one day, $20 for two, and it's not stadium seating, watching an event or anything. It's kind of this whole interactive festival with a whole lot of stuff to do, and it's all Hearthstone.
Yeah, long tables, just get to go in, play with your friends, watch a little bit of Hearthstone. You do have the option and the ability to potentially play against the devs, so that would be an awesome opportunity for you guys to get out to. But, you know, if you do attend the event, you do get that Dalaran Flame card back, and you
Absolutely.
get $10 to the gift store. And, you know, we have those Ungoro t-shirts, the Team Tespa t-shirts as well, so a lot of fun and just lots of opportunities there.
All right, we are going to get a look at this scoreboard here. We are 1-1 in the series, maybe going to a full best of 5 here. That would be pretty awesome for us. We've got a Warrior left still that University of Maryland has to grab a win with. And I have to say, if they're able to cue that into the Priest, and it's not Purify Priest, and it's that N'Zoth Priest, I think that Taunt Warrior is going to have a really good match there. Yeah,
the inevitability of the Ragnaros hero power being able to continually hit for 8 damage a turn is just so strong. It's probably one of the stronger quests alongside the Rogue quest that people have been experimenting with.
Right.
So we will have to see there. I'm a little curious to see what these rogues are. I'm expecting them to be that Caverns Below quest rogue that we've been seeing so popular on ladder lately.
And there's Kiernan, Ex-Scoundrel, rather, for most of you. It gave me a little shout out earlier because I've been playing only Quest Rogue since Ungoro dropped. Rogue is my favorite class, and I think the quest is a whole lot of fun because, as Ex-Scoundrel said earlier, there's so many ways that you can work with it. You can go Control-y by running Vanishes and Cold Light Oracles. You can, and Teachers almost. You can go straight aggro with all the charges and just Shadow Steps and Panda Men. Those Youthful Brewmasters going to be adding a lot as well. So definitely, you can see a full aggro Quest Rogue against a full control almost Quest Rogue, and that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've had the aggro rogue coming out here, and you know, the Quest Rogue, we've seen a lot, as you said, a lot of variation. I'm really excited to see kind of what tech cards these players have decided to put in. We've seen lists with Cold Light Oracles and Vanishes, a more control list, like you've been saying.
Yeah.
We've seen more aggressive lists that are running cards like Stone Tusk Boars, Patches the Pirate, and the South Sea Deckhands. You know, once you get the quest complete, those are 1 mana, 5/5 charges that you can just keep bouncing back and forth to your hand. And we've seen how strong that was in some of the games earlier today.
Definitely a good option. And speaking of tech cards, we are going to get a glimpse at one of these decks coming out here. This is going to be the Priest deck that is making its way over into University of Maryland's lineup. And
it appears to be a Dragon Elemental Priest.
Misspeaking a little bit, this is L'École Polytechnique running this deck here. Of course, that was Maryland with the Paladin that we saw earlier.
So, very interesting list that we have here. An Elemental Dragon Priest. We see cards like Shadow Visions coming out here. Really cool card. I've been having a ton of fun with this card. Just 2 mana, discover a copy of a spell in your deck. Very strong spells. Dragonfire Potions, Holy Novas, Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Pains. Very just versatile. I need to find the card that fits really well in the situation right now.
I really am liking the look of this deck. So the reason that we like the Purify Priest right now is because it gets on the board solidly before a lot of other decks do. And in a way, that's what Dragon Priest kind of always did. And this seems like a very natural evolution of this list to me, because you're losing, obviously, the Twilight Whelps. You're losing the Azure Drakes, which has been a bane for a lot of these decks. That's why you're seeing so many decks running into draw problems in the mid game. They don't have that extra draw from the Azure Drake. But they are able to still supplement in those Draconid operatives, which are still so strong. They got Nether Spites to round it out, and just all sorts of synergy here.
Yeah, you know, the Dragon Priest of old, a very mid-range centric deck, didn't really go above that 6 cost, so we just see the Primordial Drakes going a little bit higher than that. So just not going to be the tempo deck, it's going to be more of a control style deck, so really interested to see how it comes out. Just a couple other shout-outs to these cards.
Yeah.
Lyra the Sun Shard, really cool card, being able to combo that with Shadow Visions, get a lot of value in your hand.
Haven't seen that one played yet, so I'm super excited about that. We've got the Radiant Elemental, which is just a similarly bodied Sorcerer's Apprentice for the Priest, a 2-mana 2/3, and Shadow Visions is one that we've been having a lot of fun with. Discover a copy of a spell in your deck.
So, and then the last card to really point out there is going to be that Curious Glimmer Roots.
Yep.
They're running a 1-of copy of that card. Battle cry, look at 3 cards, guess which one started in your opponent's deck to get a copy of it. Kind of a fun card, rewarding you for a little bit of a guessing game. And with the Journey to Un'Goro just being released, you don't always know what kind of deck your opponent is playing. So a lot of fun there. Really excited to see this list and how it pans out.
This is going to be very interesting, yeah, because Maryland is really not going to have any read on this Priest at all. I can't. I haven't seen any Dragon Priest yet.
Nah.
We kind of theorized a list. It wasn't anywhere close to that. It was very much closer to the Purify Priest with just Defenders of Argus and get bodies on the board and establish them. But this is going to be more similar to the old Dragon Priest, just tempo, 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 drop, drop, drop.
So we'll have to see if that Dragon Priest can control the board enough. It might not have the best matchup against the Control Warrior on the side of University of Maryland.
Yeah.
So we'll hope. Hopefully he will try to dodge that matchup. But
Might be able to outpace it. That'll be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see. A lot of large threats, but very weak to things like Shield Block or Shield Slam. Excuse me.
Right.
And executes and those brawls. So.
Oh man, my deck's so weak to Shield Block. What do I tech against?
Man, weak to armor. Don't. But then, yeah. And
sorry, kind of threw you off track there.
just a little bit. So, but having a lot of fun here, and I don't think that the Dragon Priest will be able to perform all that well into the Warrior. I am excited to find out. You know, the Dragon Priest, a list that everyone was said gonna be pretty dead.
So we're either going to have that Dragon Priest into the Warrior, mirror rogues, or something in between. They're a rogue against a priest or a rogue against a warrior. So in either of the rogue against priest or warrior decks, I think the priest is going to do a little better, but that warrior is basically just going to give the rogue free reign to get his quest done if he's running that quest rogue.
Yeah, but those taunts can be quite intimidating even for the 5/5s. The more
That's why you run Vanish.
The more removal version of the Taunt Warrior makes it look, as we've been seeing, a little more inconsistent. We do see a lot of the hands clogged up with Executes, Sleep with the Fishes, Whirlwinds, cards of that nature. So you don't always have the option to tempo out those mid-game minions that kind of contest the board of the Rogue.
All right, we are going to be jumping into this game, and it is going to be the matchup that we have been theorizing about and trying to figure out who's going to have the upper end here. That Dragonfire Potion probably going to be tossed. That's going to get some good value around the mid-game, but this is going to be all about how can Nicole Polytechnique get on the board early and start getting damage to that face, because as soon as that hero power is completed and turns him into Ragnaros, Maryland is going to have a much easier job dealing with that board.
So, as we said before, the Dragon Priest, not a lot of that early tempo that it's used to with some of the, a lot of those early game minions leaving with the rotation of the Year of the Mammoth. So look at our hand, looking very heavy. We do have the Draken Operative, a very solid keep, and they're going to need a dragon over the course of the next couple turns to be able to activate that before it drops down on turn 4 with the coin or on turn 5 on tempo.
Well, they do have quite a few turns to get there, so that will be... I definitely imagine them finding a dragon before that. I think it's statistically likely. I'll go out on a limb and just call that one. We do have a pretty standard fare over here for the University of Maryland. That Fiery War Axe is going to make its appearance on turn 2, just like last game. Hopefully not like last game. It might contribute to a victory here.
So a little bit, worrisome to develop the Fiery War Axe on an empty board here for the Warrior. A lot of lists running things like Acidic Swamp Ooze and Gluttonous Ooze in the expectation that they're going to be seeing as
Galaka Crawlers.
We've seen the Galaka Crawlers. There is a lot of expectation here to be seeing those Pirate Warriors coming out. So you're trying to weigh the options. Is it worth running it? And they're going to decide that it's not.
Interesting. So there is that Acidic Swamp Ooze in Nicole Polytechnique's deck. They are running the 1-of, so definitely playing around that a little bit for Maryland, playing around the possibility of that being there, even in the deck. Radiant Elemental going to come down, turn itself into a 2/5 in probably the most efficient combo you can use with this card. And that is just going to be a nice little value bomb for EPM into some Netherspite Historian next turn, or a Cabal Talon Priest to make that just a obnoxiously statted minion.
And Maryland, no easy way to deal with that. The Fiery Warack's going to be able to chip it down to 3, but, you know, as the Priest, having that lesser heal hero power is going to be able to slowly bring that up to par over a couple turns. Cabal Talon Priest also in the hand of EPM here, so that will be quite the beefy Radiant Elemental, and we'll have to see if the spells that the Dragon Priest run are efficient enough and effective enough to be able to get a lot of value out of that card.
All right, so because this is such a mystery Priest deck, we really need to start looking at this from Maryland's perspective and saying, what are we playing against?
That's
we
true.
have not seen a dragon. All we've seen is Radiant Elemental and Power Word Shield. Oh my goodness, that gives me no read on what that deck is at all. It's some sort of an elemental priest, but there's such variation in that right now.
Yeah, so anywhere from, you know, maybe potentially a Kazakus list with the Death Rattle could run the Radiant Elemental and the Power Word Shield. A Tempo Elemental list could be running those cards as well.
Yeah, you built a Kazakus deck that was elemental priest and didn't look that bad.
No, it looks very interesting. So probably not a solid read that it will be the Dragon Priest here. So just going to take it slow, develop the Fiery Warax, and try to, you know, get a better read on what the Priest list actually is.
Yeah, and so information is going to be the name of the game for Maryland. That Cabal Talon Priest does come down, buffing that right up and making it so tempting to burn that Execute early on in this match. There's a lot of big threats left in EPM's deck, though, so this could just be a bit of a bait here.
So other options
A trap
here,
to fall into for Maryland.
Yeah, Ravaging Ghoul and being able to clear off the Cabal Talon Priest is another option available to them that would let them curve cleanly into either the Direhorn Hatchling or the Alley Armorsmith on the following turn. So a lot of options here for Maryland.
That play is definitely pretty good. The only problem I see with that play is the fact that it doesn't do anything about the Radiant Elemental, because L'école Polytechnique at that point could heal it back up to full at getting rid of the chances of an Execute proc coming down at any point in the near future.
Yeah, so we also see here hovering over that quest here for Maryland that is going to be 0 out of 7 taunts, and they have not drawn a taunt up until, or they haven't not been able to play a taunt up until this point. So the Direhorn Hatchling and the Alley Armorsmith going to begin the chain of taunts that lets them finally find Sulfuris, the Fire Plume's heart.
We begin the slow count to 7 when the game ultimately just completely transforms in Maryland's favor. So we will be keeping track of that. Netherspite Historian or coin into Draconid Operative?
I'm liking the Operative here. That Primordial Drake coming into the hand that's going to allow you to proc, or get the dragon in the hand to proc the Draconid Operative. Looking at the cards in the hand, the Curator is interesting. It does allow you to draw a dragon, but that Execute also very interesting choice, being able to clear off some of those big minions that, you know, the Priest doesn't always have efficient removal into. Shadow Word Pains and Shadow Word Deaths are only so much. And, you know, 2 Dragonfire Potions in the hand, you know, there's a lot of removal there, so maybe the Execute doesn't seem as appealing.
Execute is definitely an interesting option for me. I'm not ruling out the Slam, because this game could very well come down to how fast can L'école Polytechnique find the threats in their deck and get them out onto the board in a solid enough position. So that Slam, 1 extra card economy in this deck could mean a whole lot, but that is going to be passed over in favor of the little more expensive, but definitely more efficient card economy of that Curator.
Yeah, and I like the Curator pickup here just because it puts a body in the hand and a body on the board. So the Warrior is going to be able to control the board with these spells like we just see Ravaging Ghoul, Execute. Choosing to leave the Radiant Elemental up, and that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, as we said, there aren't a lot of very impactful spells of the Priest outside of removal. We see the 2 Dragonfire Potions, the Holy Nova, and the Pains and the Deaths. So not a lot of proactive spells here for the Priest outside of Shadow Visions, which just finds you another reactive card.
All right, so we have another value turn being set up here for L'école Polytechnique, and the question is, how do they go about it? The easy, or, well, I don't know if I'll call it easy, but you can throw down the Netherspite Historian into Northshire Cleric and heal your Radiant Elemental, get an extra draw out of there, get a body in the hand, an extra dragon. That's a pretty good idea. You also have both Dragonfire Potions in the hand, so I kind of like that play. The other way is to burn the Shadow Word Pain and only take one of those two other options, either the Netherspite Historian and the heal of the Radiant Elemental, or the Northshire Cleric and the heal of the Radiant Elemental.
Yeah, but the Shadow Word Pain is just so huge in this matchup. Things like Direhorn Hatchlings,
True.
Accolade of Pains, Bloodhoof Braves. There are so many good, and Alley Armorsmiths as well. There's so many good Shadow Word Pain targets in this deck. I think you kind of have to hold on to it.
And plus, with the double Dragonfire in hand, that Ravaging Gold really does not pose a threat at any point. So actually, they are going to go with that play. Going to be a little sad if that Alley Armorsmith comes down next turn that they don't have another Shadow Word Pain in hand, but they do get more value into their deck. Drawing that Curious Glimmerroot is going to let them have a chance at burgling another card out of here, and when they've seen basically Maryland's entire deck, it's probably going to be 100% pick rate on getting that card right.
Probably. So another reason why the Shadow Word Pain was actually a very solid play is that it lets the Northshire Cleric remain on the board.
Right,
So that will
it protects the Northshire Cleric.
So that will let them continue to get card economy into their hands, and that's kind of what they're going to need. But Curious Glimmerroot going to come out. Which card do you think is going to be in the deck of University of Maryland?
Can you spot the right card?
I'd probably have to rule out the Nazoth First Mate. The Bloodhoof Brave seems like the right choice. King Mosh, a really, really cool card, combos pretty well with cards like Whirlwind, which we do see are being run in the deck, but the Taunt just has to be the choice there.
Yeah, King Mosh is an interesting card, and it works so well theoretically in this deck as a very expensive and efficient Sleep with the Fishes to tempo it after a Primordial Drake, but it's really great in that 1-1 situation where you turn 8 Primordial Drake into turn 9 King Mosh and just eliminate all the board around it. So, not surprised. Again, not going to spend too much time there because the Bloodhoof Brave was a very obvious choice. And of course, if you pick the King Mosh, you're not going to grab that one anyway, so no loss or anything.
Yeah, but really excited to see the Curious Glimmerroot.
1 mana Shadow Visions.
Yeah, but like we said, it's just going to be able to find more removal. Could have found a potential Shadow Word Pain there. They do have a second one in the deck. So that might be the card to look out for. Both Dragonfires in the hand, so not going to be able to find that.
It's very interesting to me that he didn't play the Shadow Visions with the 1 extra mana.
The rope was burning, so that is that is a consideration.
That's fair.
You do have to make, you do have to take time, decide what the best outcome is off
I
the
just
Discover.
couldn't think of any other reason why you would be saving that card. But yeah, if you're not sure, you want to take the time, make sure that you get the card that you need in this situation. And into the Control Warrior, sometimes it's not super obvious.
So that Northshire Cleric going to go down to the Fiery War Axe, and that will be the end of the card economy for now for the Dragon Priest. We have a lot more to come with the Curator potentially coming down on the next turn. Direhorn Hatchling going to hit the board, and Bookworm is a good pickup.
Yeah, Shadow Word Pains, Bookworms, the Priest. I'm starting to see why this is going to work so well as a deck. It gets big bodies on the board, and it deals with all of these high health minions that so many decks are running right now. Most notably, obviously, this exact matchup that they're queuing into. This deck almost seems built just to counter this full control Taunt Warrior, at least a little bit. It seems to work quite well against it.
Yeah, it's doing well at the moment, being able to pressure down the board. The Shadow Vision's going to come down. You do have an option for a second Shadow Visions if the choices here are not that appealing. That Shadow Word Pain has to look very, very juicy, though, being able to kill off the Direhorn Hatchling.
So I think the only reason you take the Shadow Visions here is because you're likely running another death in your deck, but the Shadow Word Pain is going to be quite a good pickup. Like we've been saying, a lot of 3 health minions for both that and Bookworm to help you deal with at any point during this game.
So another card that I kind of want to touch on, looking back at Maryland's hand, they have the Alley Armorsmith, the Primordial Drake, Deathwing, and Bloodhoof Brave. So Deathwing can be a very, very impactful and also very risky card. We do have both the Shadow Word Deaths in the Priest list, but being as board-centric and control-y as it is, Deathwing could provide a large swing turn if both of those deaths end up being used over the course of the game on things like the Direhorn, the larger Direhorn.
So that Deathwing is going to be something that we have to keep track of at all points during this game because, as we've been saying, this Priest deck is very board-centric, and Deathwing is just going to do the best that it does into those kinds of decks. When your opponent has 4 or 5 healthily statted minions on the board, and they just all disappear instantly, replaced by a 12/12. And another point to bring up, L'École Polytechnique has not seen the Deathwing. So they're not going to know to save that death for it.
Would have been very interesting if the Deathwing came up as an option for the Curious Glimmerroot.
That would have been.
So that would have been quite the shell shock there.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure you could ever. Well, ever, yeah. But definitely a tough decision there, depending on the other cards.
Bloodhoof Brave going to hit the board, and he's going to be very happy to see that Shadow Word Pain that he picked up off of the Shadow Visions on the previous turn.
So, just like whole Polytechnique has been kind of cruising on through this game. It seems like he has had every answer that he's needed in terms of removing these minions from Maryland's board. He's only done a moderate amount of damage to the face, though, and that's because all of his plays have been adding value to his hand. His hand is absolutely gigantic right now. It's full of minions. It's full of AoE removals, everything you could ask for. So in terms of the long game, he's looking pretty good here. You just got to be careful how long you make the long game against a taunt control warrior.
Yeah, as we said, there is a level of inevitability when your opponent's hero power is 2 mana, deal 8 damage to a random minion or to potentially to the face as well. So Alex Straza going to be the pickup there for that Netherspite Historian, going to potentially get just a big body on the board, and that's exactly what the Priest deck needs. They need big threats and to be able to push the damage, because they've had a lot of board presence this entire game, but they've been 1 attack, 2 attack, 3 attack minions, and that's not the pressure that's really going to be putting on the hurt onto Maryland.
Tarlord comes down. We don't have another Shadow Word Pain in the deck. We have the Shadow Word Death. Oh, of course, that is a 5/11 on your turn. That is funny how those Tar Creepers work. They just make it nice and easy for you to use a Shadow Word Pain on them. The only issue with that is we are likely going to see that Deathwing come down next turn if the Pain is used here. So that turn would probably be you use Pain, Shadow Word Death, and then what are you doing with the rest of your mana? You've got 6, so a Twilight Drake into a heal or something, and that is going to be a large 4-minion board, all decently statted, and Deathwing is going to feel really good in there.
So a couple different other options here. Dragonfire Potion is one that particularly stands out to me. Not the most efficient use, but then again, against the Control Warrior, when are you going to have a very efficient use of the Dragonfire Potion?
Right.
Going to choose to use the Shadow Word Death here. They do have another one in the deck, so we will have to look out for that one later. But I really like this, being able to push the 6 damage this turn. And Maryland is, they are starting to get low. They are being chipped down very, very slowly. These Alley Armor Smiths are going to provide quite the wall of taunts and armor, and that might be a little difficult to deal with outside of the Dragonfire Potions. Yeah,
so don't expect to see that Deathwing throw down this turn, because it's just not too much of a board there to be scared of. The question is, you still saw that death last turn, so it's very tempting to throw the Deathwing down and just try to take control of this game right now. But like you said, double Alley Armor Smith gets you closer to that quest. It's really a question of what they're prioritizing right now. Turning this board around right now, or continuing to hold on. Don't pull until you see the whites of their eyes, and just try to drag it down to the finish.
So the Brawl is going to come out here. The Bookworm will survive, probably the largest minion, but it's not the Bloodhoof Brave, but has the taunt. A little, not entirely relevant. Second Twilight Drake going to come into the hand here, and that is going to be, that will give them a large board presence in this game, and with the first Brawl being seen, that could be a very reasonable play.
Yeah, so that's okay. I was wondering about the efficiency, or rather the line of play in playing the Brawl there, when it, the upside was very small. But I really like that point you just made. It invites L'École Polytechnique to flood the board now with as many minions as they can, just saying, okay, if you have the second Brawl, great, I'll push through that, and I still have Curator. I can keep drawing. That seems like a very solid play from their point of view right now.
We could see how that ends up panning out over the next couple turns, but very difficult turn here for EPM as the Dragon Priest. Do you decide to go with the Curator? Do you decide to go with these Twilight Drakes? The Twilight Drakes have to seem very tempting.
That Dragonfire Potion is, of course, going to ignore all of those dragons and provide a clean trade, while only giving 2 armor to Maryland for that Alley Armor Smith. Definitely a nice use there. And we are starting to run out of plays for Maryland before we start throwing down that Deathwing. We can stall at least probably for a couple more turns here and try to get him to play just another minion or two. Get as much value out of that Deathwing as you possibly can.
So he's getting quite close to being able to...
this is nice too, of course. You know your opponent's running Dragonfire Potion, at least one.
Yeah, it was a point that I kind of wanted to bring up a little later in the game, but that Primordial Drake, very interesting card into the Dragon Priest, because the Dragonfire Potions don't chip it down because it does have that Dragon tag. Shadow Word Pains, Shadow Word Deaths aren't that effective, so they will have to chip it down with minions over the course of a couple turns. And Twilight Drake not matching up the greatest against it.
No, just basically going to trade evenly, and as a priest, that can work out, but even with a hero power in there, that's not going to let the Twilight Drake survive past a double trade. And so EPM going into the think tank a little bit here. A lot of big threats. The question is, in what order do they play them in, and which ones do they decide to throw down here? Because I don't really see any point in throwing down Alex, of course. It does nothing, or it really hurts you, or heals your opponent slightly.
It heals your opponent by 2, but you do develop the 8/8. And when's a better time to play it? Was the other question. Your opponent is at 13. They're not getting above that life threshold.
And I guess if the game goes long enough that your health total is significantly under 15 and you're saving Alex for heal, then that's probably not the line of play you want to be taking against the warrior anyway. So yeah, I can definitely see just throwing it down and healing Marilyn for 2, I guess. Yeah.
So taking the more proactive of the play is going to drop down the Cabal Talon Priest and the second Twilight Drake. Dirty Rat coming into the hands. That has a couple of very good pulls.
Yes, it does, but it also pulls pretty much a giant body no matter which way you look at it. That Acidic Swamp Ooze is going to be not so much along those lines, but the question is, do we manage to get a Dirty Rat down this turn with the Alley Armorsmith and maybe even the Ravaging Ghoul at that point, and again, just put more minions on the board to eat up with that Deathwing. In the meantime, though, we are going to complete this quest. We're 1 turn away and have the chance to throw down a proc here. 50% chance of getting rid of a minion on the board sounds pretty good to me.
As we said, just getting Sulfuras out as quickly as possible is the win condition of the warrior here. Going to chip down at these medium range sets. These Twilight Drakes are going to be the only minions in the deck that are going to be outside of the range of the Ragnaros hero power.
Right.
So Dragon Priest is going to have a very difficult time getting back on the board, being able to push damage, as they do not run any direct damage in their deck.
That is very true. So here comes the proc. It's going to the face, which means that will be a trade into the 4/4, leaving 1 minion and some very non-beneficial trades here for EPM, or non-efficient trades for them. That Shadow Word Death is going to be something that we have to keep an eye on, because Maryland doesn't have any other threats that's going to bait that out before that Deathwing comes down.
So we'll have to see if they decide to drop the Deathwing anytime soon. The Ravaging Ghoul and the Dirty Rat, not particularly powerful cards in their arsenal, so maybe they do decide, if the Priest does make a very wide board as a last attempt effort to push through that last remaining 11 health of the University of Maryland, if Deathwing becomes the play. The Primordial Drake, however, will hit the board. That will clear off the remaining minion.
Right.
The Acidic Swamp Ooze is going to clear off the weapon, and the board getting as wide as it can here for EPM.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't know if we see EPM attack here. It seems largely the same to me either way. Yeah, I don't think there was too much something to delve into there, so won't try to analyze that one too much. Here we go. We've got a Direhorn Hatchling that can shuffle that 6/9 into the deck and hopefully at some point maybe draw that and bait out the Shadow Word Death. And in the meantime, just going to keep using 1 hero power proc per turn and see if you can grab board control over the course of a few of them.
So no giant removal spell outside of that Deathwing. I do believe we have a second Brawl in the deck for University of Maryland. So that is going to be one to look out for. Maybe, not have to drop the Deathwing until you see the second Shadow Word Death. Direhorn Hatchling, very interesting in this case. Going to see what comes off of the die-in section that's going to hit the Twilight Drake.
Here comes Alex Straza off of the Dirty Rat, and Maryland decided to use that Die Insect proc before using the Dirty Rat in case it hit something kind of inconsequential and just that word where you make things inefficient. I don't know. Would you put extra cards in your deck and you don't want to draw them? You make your deck fat, I guess. You make the board fatter and don't want to miss any priority targets with that die insect.
But oh man, that Dirty Rat is going to be absolutely huge. An 8/8 hitting the board for free, doesn't even have to heal his opponent up the 4. Best case scenario here for the Dragon Priest. He will be able to get some efficient trades here into the Dragon Fire Potion.
Oh, goodness.
That remaining damage, and I have to imagine we're going to see Deathwing here.
Yep, that is about the only play that I can see giving Maryland another turn. Maybe a lucky Brawl, but no, there's no way you can risk throwing down a Brawl at this point. So it's going to be the Deathwing coming. Ooh, okay, yeah, that's still enough to get through the Direhorn Matriarch and still complete that. So Deathwing comes down. That Shadow Word Death will be there to answer it along with the Curator. And suddenly, we have Maryland top decking, but they have a Ragnaros hero power. Oh my goodness, this is getting down to the wire, Galestrom.
Yeah, so a little unfortunate there for Maryland that they drew the Direhorn Matriarch, a card that they would have loved to see come off the next card, off the top here. The top of the deck will be an Execute, and that just hurts.
Oh my goodness, they are 1 damage now that they've missed that that proc on the Curator from going down in this game. Oh my goodness, Maryland down to the wire on this one. The Execute, just a dead draw in that situation.
Yeah, and you saw Maryland's faces there on the player cam. Once the Shadow Word Death hit the board, they knew they had to play the Deathwing there, and they were just hoping, praying that that second Shadow Word Death was not in the hand. It was, and they're just hoping off the top, I need something good. They get that Execute, and you can just kind of see it on their faces. They're just like, oh man, we just, the double whiff there hurts a lot, and we will probably see the Dragon Priest coming through in this matchup.
I would definitely say it is looking likely at this point. What kind of a miracle draw? A Brawl here can save the game still. Is that going to be what we see? It is going to be an Ornery Direhorn, so a lucky proc
Divine Shield is
can
not bad.
Still make it so that Maryland is going to survive another turn, and 1 extra turn may be all they need with such a powerful hero power. That is, the first unlucky rag proc that they got here.
Yeah, so no Shadow Word Deaths left in the deck here for the Dragon Priest, so that Shadow Visions will not find them an answer.
Nova,
the Holy Nova will do it, so that will provide the 2 damage to the face here.
They only had the 1 spell left in their deck.
And Dragon Priest taking an unexpected win here in game number 3.
Wow, so either the Holy Nova there or the Shadow Visions would have done it, and I think it is just that 1 Holy Nova, I believe, so wow, definitely a fantastic draw there coming off for L'École Polytechnique, but they did seem to be mostly in control of that game. It was down to the wire, that 1 health on the Warrior, but I believed in them that they were going to come through there.
Yeah, no, that chip damage throughout the early game from that Radiant Elemental, very, very strong, getting them as low as they did and being able to pressure them down. And we see the, part of the weakness of that Sulfuras replacing your hero power. The 8 damage is very, very nice if you can afford to be offensive, but when the Control Warrior technically is built so that it can kind of stall the game out and eliminate your opponent's win condition, and when you don't have that armor, you don't actually always have that option anymore.
All right, well, the wait is over, Galestrom. We finally get to cast a rogue. I am so psyched for this. I'm hoping it's a quest rogue, so we can go into a lot of depth as to how these quests, and these decks in particular work out. And I do believe we are going to be seeing a rogue mirror in the next matchup.
So we have seen a rogue mirror earlier today between the 2 quest rogues, so very interesting, and it comes down to a battle of who gets their shadow steps and their bounce back effects first, who completes the quest first, because the rogue typically isn't known for being able to clear the board as well as some other classes. So once whoever hits that 5/5 threshold typically can get very, very far ahead in just a couple turns.
Going to be very interesting to see what kind of decks that they bring here. Again, you can go full aggro quest rogue, South Sea deckhands, patches, swashbucklers, stone tusk boars, all of these charges, and just turn into 5/5 minions. And you can go the more draw, more control, a bunch of weird spells into Violet Teacher. There's so many different ways that you can use this rogue quest that there's just an outline for how you do this. You need draw and getting through your deck. You need bounce back effects from those shadow steps, and then you need a way to turn your quest into a game win. So to get minions on the board after that.
So both these players running the Stone Tusk Spore, we just saw them in the opening hands. Merlin mulliganing it away, and like we just said, it comes down to whoever can complete the quest first. So Gadgetzan Ferryman going to be the keep here for Maryland.
Not going to be seeing any vanishes this game, Galestrom. Unfortunately, I do not believe there is a list out there that runs the Stone Tusk Spore and any vanishes. I think that is even. I think that's a little too crazy even for me, and that's saying a lot sometimes when it comes to rogue decks.
Yep. So, you've played this matchup a lot. As Excoundra was saying, this has been the deck that you have been playing since the release of Journey to Ungoro. So, how would you approach this matchup?
This match, it's a lot like you said there, Galestrom. It comes down largely to who grabs the early bounce back effects, but it also has a little bit of, ooh, got a Violet Teacher here and a Morose. All right, we got some interesting cards to talk about at some point here. But like I was saying, premium Shadow Step effects are super important. That Patch's Draw is going to hurt. So we look over at Maryland's hand. Shadow Step is the best one because it not only puts that card back in your hand, but it makes it 2 mana cheaper, which for a Novice Engineer or a lot of other cards makes them free for that Quest Rogue. So that's going to be one big thing we're looking out for, is the fact that Maryland found the first Shadow Step, and that is just the most efficient card in this deck. Yeah,
so they have 2 very cheap, one Shadow Step and 1 2-mana Ferryman in their hands. So they just need a single minion, which that South Sea deckhand could act as, and another bounce back effect, either the Brewmaster or a second Shadow Step or a second Ferryman, to be able to finally, to proc their quest. So they're well on their way. Looking over here at EPM's hand, that Novice Engineer, a great bounce back target, but also very good for cycling through your deck to find all of these key pieces and components that you need to complete your quest.
So this is the difficult part about playing the Quest Rogue, is when you have a hand like L'Ecole Polytechnique has here, where you have to decide, I don't have any good bounce back minions in my hand. The best one clearly is Novice Engineer, and that would be a tempo play for me right now, but it dies. It dies 100% next turn. And so you are basically dead in the water at that point unless you literally draw into Shadow Step perfectly. And so, like L'Ecole Polytechnique says, that's not a very good chance that I draw into Shadow Step perfectly here out of 26 or 25 cards. So I'm going to play it safe, just dagger up, save my Novice Engineer for when I get something of combo to throw along with it. Have to bring up that fact that the Fan of Knives was pulled into University of Maryland's hand, which is going to hurt the Tempo Morose if that's how we see L'Ecole Polytechnique playing it, which seems kind of likely.
Yeah, no. So Morose, very, very risky. Great card after the quest has been complete.
Amazing card after the quest. A 5/5 minion with stealth. So it's a Stranglethorn Tiger that spawns Stranglethorn Tigers without stealth.
Yes.
That seems... Sure.
It is quite a strong card once the quest has been complete. Violet Teacher, not the card you wanted to see. Like we said, he just needs his Shadow Step effects. So I would not be surprised to see the Novice Engineer come down here. But Maryland's being proactive with their quest, coining out the Gadgetzan Ferryman that's going to bounce back the South Sea deckhands to the hand. So that will probably be the card of choice to try to get all these Shadow Step targets on.
Yep, it will be at a 2 out of 4 the second time it comes down. That Shadow Step will turn it into a 3 out of 4, so you just need to find one more bounce back effect or that other South Sea deckhand. And the trick here is never leave that minion that you're playing, that you're comboing with, never leave it on the board. If you get 3 out of 4 with a minion and you don't have that last Shadow Step effect and you leave it on the board, a lot of times that can be your second minion, that second copy of that minion in your deck, and then you are just never completing the quest with that minion, and all of your efforts have gone to naught.
So deciding to throw down the Tempo Morose here, and that is going to be heavily punished by the Fan of Knives in the hand of Maryland here. Pretty straightforward turn for them.
Yep, that is just going to be the Fan of Knives. We're going to continue the card economy here, and trying to find some more Shadow Step effects, have that Eviscerate, which isn't going to be doing a whole lot until later in this match, but, later in this match, how much does Eviscerate do when you've got a bunch of 5/5s on the board?
So, you see the player there for EPM on the player cam, nodding his head. Yep, I knew the Fan of Knives was a potential out, but he thought that the risk was well worth it.
And this is a really good follow-up to that.
It is. So Violet Teacher going to hit the board, and that's going to keep spawning a couple 1/1s, and that's going to give him a little bit of extra pressure. So, they're going to be looking for pressure, while Maryland, on the other hand, is going to be looking for that second bounce back effect, and there it is.
Draws
the Youthful Brewmaster.
The Youthful Brewmaster, or as I like to call it, the Panda Man. And he's got a lot of things he can do here with this turn. But he can't do all of them. He can't deckhand into Panda Man into backstab eviscerate. That's just too much mana there. It's 5 instead of the 4. So he's got to make a little bit of a decision. I imagine that it's going to be something like...
Well, you can proc the quest this turn, so that would be Pirate into Youthful Brewmaster and then
Right.
Shadow Step it, or either way would complete the quest. That would allow you to play the quest on turn 5, and then you can just go off Violet Teacher, Backstab, Eviscerate on turn 6. So
right.
I have to imagine that's going to be the plan. And with no bounce back effects in sight here for EPM, it's going to be a long road ahead of them, or in this case, maybe be a very quick road ahead of them.
Yeah.
If Maryland can get that far ahead on board this early.
I really, really like this play the more I think about it, and I'm actually kind of embarrassed that I was focusing so hard on the backstab eviscerate, because the Violet Teacher for EPM, that is a really big deal. Like that. At this point in the game, it seems like that's about the only drop that they had. You know, their hand seems pretty dead. So for Maryland, you have the option, do I focus on that Violet Teacher, or do I just guarantee that I'm going to get this quest done first? And what is a Violet Teacher with the board? A 1/1's going to do into even 1 or 2 5/5s on the board. So definitely the correct line of thinking there, and I just kudos to them for finding that one, because I fell into the trap. I fell into the backstab eviscerate trap on that turn.
Yeah, the Violet Teacher, a very, very scary card in certain other classes. Druid is one to come to mind. Token Druid has been a class that is able to utilize the full extent of the Violet Teacher, being able to buff it with such low-costing buffing effects. However, Rogue doesn't really have those large those large board buff effects,
No.
so that Violet Teacher will just be spawning 1/1s until the quest is complete.
Don't have the board buff effects until we explore Ungoro, Galestorm, when all of their minions just become super powerful through the discovery of those ice caverns. That is such a interesting storyline. Actually, I want to bring up just quickly the Blizzard deck, that I don't know what they call those, the pre-made decks?
Yeah, if you go into the in-game client and you go to build a rogue deck, and normally we just go over to the choose of deck, but if you see the pre-built decks and you go to the Journey to Ungoro pre-built deck that they built, the Caverns Below list for the rogue, they have a nice, interesting story for you there on the side about how the pirates go and they're digging to try to find the crystal core.
Yeah.
So definitely a read if you care for a little bit of the lore and the storyline behind the game.
Yeah, I don't usually go into those lists at all, but I was just a little curious as to how Blizzard was saying, how should we be looking at this quest rogue, and just pirates and charges, but that story made it a lot of fun for me. Just be like, yes, it does feel like the pirates are in here digging into the caverns for a reward. So I was very happy to see that little story added there.
So first bounce back effect coming into the hand here for EPM, that Youthful Brewmaster and a Novice Engineer to boot. So that is going to be the bounce back card of choice, and that will let them continually cycle.
They're going to throw it down.
Very risky here. Shadow Step off the top is absolutely huge.
So the reason that you can do this is because you're most of the way through your deck, and there is a second Novice Engineer in there. So if that dies this turn, if you don't draw the Shadow Step and it dies, it is not the end of the world. It was still a risky play, because if you don't draw that Shadow Step and it does die, you have to wait for whenever that Novice Engineer comes into your hand, basically. So a great draw there for L'École Polytechnique. Gives them the option, and with more draws on their side and now a free Novice Engineer, this quest is becoming very doable for them.
Yeah, so I like keeping the Novice Engineer in your hand, developing the Eviscerate that will clear off the South Sea deck hands from the board and allow you to continually gain pressure with the Violet Teacher. And if we see the Crystal, they have the preparation in the hand. So if we see the Crystal Core or off of a second bounce back effect here for EPM, that could be a very, very strong board swing with how much board they already have.
There are a lot of draws in I don't know about... No, actually doing the math here, there are a lot of draws in EPM's deck that give them lethal next turn.
That is absolutely nuts. They do have 2 charges in the hand, so if Novice Engineer, they have basically 2 draws.
I wasn't even counting the charges.
They have 2 draws to find the second Shadow Step, the second Youthful Brewmaster, or either Gadgetzan Ferryman. So there'll be 4 cards remaining in their deck to be able to...
2 chances at 4 cards out of 19. I can't do the math that quickly
odds,
there, but it's not terrible at that point.
You gotta go for it here.
Yep, you still have that second one in your deck. We find the Violet Teacher, and you see hand to the head. Not what we were looking for there. Do we swashbuckle bounce back effect? That is going to be a no. And oh my goodness.
And
that's game.
Not quite yet.
Oh no. So you can still play super
And you have to at this point.
Yeah,
you would be dead otherwise. So he will have to trade the Violet Teacher and 2 of the apprentices into the opposing Violet Teacher that will leave his opponent with 10 damage on the board plus 1 from the hero power, leaving him at a single life total point. So
only the Eviscerate draw, I believe, or just like, a Stone Tusk board at that point would do it for Maryland. But if they don't manage to find that, there is, I think, still an out here for L'École Polytechnique. Just getting that quest done next turn still leaves them in this game, potentially. So we are going to see the full trade. EPM's going to go down to 1 health. Very well, actually, I suppose if Maryland wanted to, they could just continue to full trade here now that they have all the value on their side. Yeah,
the Novice Engineer and the Phantom Knives, both very good cards. The Phantom Knives in particular will be able to clear off the Novice Engineer on the side of the board for EPM. That will eliminate the target that they have for the bounce back effect. So the second Novice Engineer would be the only out in their deck to be able to potentially bring themselves back in this game. However, the Phantom Knights plus the Novice Engineer also gives them 2 draws to find an Eviscerate, a Stone Tusk Boar, the Sassy Deckhand. So a lot of outs here for Maryland, and you see on the player cams just how much discussion's going on between these players.
So interesting to see this bit of a hybrid. I call this kind of a hybrid list. This is going to be the game with that Stone Tusk board going over to Maryland. They are going to bring this series to a 2-2. Headed over to Game 5, and that is going to be, what is that, a Rogue against the Warrior?
Yes, I believe that is the case. So we'll have to see how those matchups unfolds. But man, these games today have been absolutely incredible.
Oh my gosh!
Such a long, drawn-out series. We've seen the mid-range Elemental Paladin. We've seen the Dragon Priest. I'm just. Journey to Angora has been such a unique and fun experience these first couple days, and getting to see the innovation of these players has been really, really cool for me.
Okay, so we are going to be going over into that Rogue into Warrior matchup, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. To me, this leans in favor of the Rogue. The quest, I believe, is going to be a little easier to get done faster than obtaining Sulfurous from the Fire Plume. And once you get those 5/5s on the board, there are only so many times the Warrior is going to be able to withstand the onslaught.
Yeah, 2 Brawls are the big ones. The Primordial Drake into a Sleep with the Fishes combo is another one.
Deathwing.
Deathwing is the other consideration. I do not remember... Is L'École Polytechnique running the Deathwing in their list? Or no, sorry, my bad. A little confused here. But University of Maryland, that is right. They are the ones that are running the Deathwing in their list. So we will have to see how that comes into play.
We will have to see how that comes into play. And so I just want to touch a little bit on those quest lists from the Rogue. So they were running a lot of charges, a few spells, not too many there. And then the Violet Teachers. These Violet Teachers add a lot of value to that deck just in general, because you are saving backstabs, you're saving eviscerates. Any Shadow Step, of course, is going to add an extra minion to the board. But it kind of is a mix between the 2 styles, right? The Violet Teacher wants to be paired with things like Shiv and Counterfeit Coin and Razor Petal Volleys, which is the new 2-mana spell from Rogue that all it does is put 2 1-mana spells in your hand, but it's fantastic comboed with the Teacher. So these are some very interesting hybrid, a little bit, just a touch of the control side with those Violet Teachers for the board swarm in the finish, but everything else is basically just that straight aggro Rogue.
Yeah, both of these players deciding to bring the Violet Teacher in their list, a very, very strong card, as you've been mentioning. But looking over at
this hand.
The hand here for EPM.
Oh my gosh.
It's exactly what you want to see.
I am salivating right now, Galestrom.
2 bounce back effects between the Shadow Step and the Youthful Brewmaster, and the Novice Engineer as the target to boot. That is going to be absolutely insane.
Oh my gosh. So you're going to have 4 to 5 draws now in the first 2 or so turns that will... Oh my gosh, he has it. He has all the pieces for the quest in his hand already.
So here's the thing, though. Dirty Rat is in the hand of Maryland. We saw them hovering it.
Oh, man.
There are no bad targets to pull here. None. Wow, and they mulligan away the quest and find it anyway. So going to decide to go with that instead of the potential Dirty Rat. But what is the worst case scenario for using the Dirty Rat in any given situation against the Quest Rogue?
It's that Violet Teacher, and that's not a worst case scenario at all, really. A 3/5 body is nothing to this Warrior, so definitely it would have been a solid play there, but they decided instead to get that quest down first, to get the the credit, to get the credit for playing that Dirty Rat. They want to make sure that all of their taunts are counted. In the meantime, though, this lets EPM go off quite a bit, and every single draw they get adds one more target for Dirty Rat, essentially.
So if Maryland was paying attention, they probably saw that EPM kept the whole hand. So that is going to be very scary. You see the Novice Engineer into the Shadow Step, and you see them on the player cams discussing a little bit. They're just like, you know, he didn't play the Novice Engineer again. He's still on the coin. There's a lot of combinations of cards that could come out just to get the quest done as early as possible. So a little worrisome there for Maryland.
That point you just brought up is a really good one that I think we should touch on just a little bit more. The fact that EPM kept the whole mulligan. You have to be able to get a very decent read knowing what this deck is. Yeah, that has to include probably a Shadow Step because it's amazing. That you never mulligan away Shadow Step. Maybe you mulligan away one of, like, if you get Panaman and the Gadgets and Ferryman in your opening hand, maybe you mulligan away one of them. But overall, there had to have been a lot of discussion on that Dirty Rat. That just looks like such a better turn playing it on turn 2 when you consider that that full mulligan was kept.
Yeah, so also preparation being drawn off the top here. That will let them prep into the Crystal Core when that does come down next turn. So next turn we will have the Novice Engineer into the Ferryman. They will need another turn to play the Novice Engineer yet again, but being able to prep into the quest spell, and then the Swashbuckler pulling patches from the deck. That will be 2 5/5s for 1 mana, 1 has charge.
Oh boy.
Ooh, that could have been very, very bad.
Well, you know, there's only one bad target in that hand at that point because either of the Gadgets and Ferrymans are allowed to be pulled. They don't need the extra Shadow Step effect, so just the Novice Engineer would have halted all of L'École Polytechnique's plans for the moment. But in the meantime, it just seems like they are going to go off and just have a ball completing this quest super early. When Rogue high rolls, man, this Rogue really high rolls. This is just a crazy speed to get this quest done at.
Yeah, and you just see the strength of the quest Rogue with the consistency of running 2 Shadow Steps, 2 Gadgets and Ferrymans, 2 Youthful Brewmasters, and a myriad of targets in the deck that you want to be bouncing back, such as Charges, the South Sea Deckhands, the Novice Engineer being the premier one. So the deck ends up getting a lot of consistency, and you see a lot of games where the quest is complete between turns 5 and turn 7.
Maryland may literally need to pull Dirty Rat on this draw here. That would definitely be the best draw that they have, but it may be at the point in this game that they are so behind because L'École Polytechnique is so close to getting this quest done that it may be a Dirty Rat or bust kind of situation here.
Well, maybe not necessarily. They do have a lot of really cool options in their hands. The Onery Direhorn being a 5/5, either getting Divine Shield or the health, will match up very, very well against the board. The Tarlord in particular.
Ooh, and they have both Brawls too now.
Yeah, so the Tarlord in particular, that's going to be a 5/11 on your opponent's turn. They're going to have to run the Dagger plus 2 minions into that to be able to clear that. And as you said, both Brawls, that's going to be clearing off the board. So we're going to have to look for cards like Violet Teacher, cards like Morose, these things that can get continual value and get really wide boards, and see if Maryland can run out of removal to clear off all these threats.
That Morose is going to be a good pickup once that quest gets completed, but the Brawls are basically going to be the perfect answer to it. Morose actually helps out the opponent Brawl a little bit by making it harder for him to survive it. We are going to see the prep into the Crystal Core. Maybe it does make the trades a little better this turn, and I have to imagine that's what they are thinking. The other way you go with it is to throw down the Morose, and you do the quest next turn for the extra 2 5/5s on board.
I like getting the Crystal Core down while you have the 2 minions on board. Passing initiative over would basically let him just clear the minions off for free, and that's 2 less 5/5s that you get to develop.
That's very true.
So this allows him to get a relatively clean trade in here with the Gadgets and Ferryman into the Dirty Rat, and the Alley Armorsmith cannot contest it. So
I'm kind of expect to see the Shadow Step used here. Now that we are through the quest, Shadow Steps and Youthful Brewmasters and the Gadgets and Ferrymans are used basically for heals from the Rogue. You have no issues throwing any of the cards on the board back in your hand. They're 1 to 2 cost max, essentially. So you can toss them back, keep replaying them, and when they summon up to 5/5s every time, you throw it down, you trade into something for a value trade, you bounce it back, and you repeat.
So as we said, the Onery Direhorn has the potential to match up very well against these 5/5s. However, these particular options are not exactly that great. Poison.
How about super taunt, Galestrom?
You cannot override taunt with taunt. It just becomes taunt.
It just becomes massive.
It
but
does.
It stays just as taunty as it always was.
But stealth, you don't really want stealth on your target. At least it'll let him get a trade in himself. But poisonous and taunt aren't going to do anything else any better. So, and another thing that I want to bring up about keeping the Shadow Step in the hand is how many charges that the Rogue deck does run. Being able to 1 mana charge, Shadow Step it, 0 mana charge for 5. That is, you know, two cards, 1 mana, deal 10 damage, and that is just insane.
Yeah, that does make a lot more sense. I do play the weird double Vanish, double Cold Light Oracle, like kind of control-y version of the Quest Rogue, so I don't actually run any charges, and that's not how I use my Shadow Steps, but of course it is going to be the best way to use them in this matchup. I just kind of forgot that you can, you know, do that.
And we do have to keep into consideration that Patches should still be in the deck here for EPM. Their Swashbuckler was pulled off of the Dirty Rat, so Patches will be coming out as a 5-attack minion off the deck when the South Sea deckhand does hit the board.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary.
But Moreau is going to hit the board here, and that is going to play right into the Brawl of Maryland, and for a chance to, you know, and they have to dodge the bullet, you know, 25% chance that Moreau's lives. And that could be rather scary.
It's going to be a little less, actually, because...
20%, right?
Yep, he's going to spawn that extra minion there. And he's okay, we're going to coin Gadgetzin into using the Ferryman for the heal. So we see a little bit of a mix of where we were both going with this. On one side, we're going to save that Shadow Step to be able to combo with a really efficient combo later on in this game. But for the meantime, we're gonna use the bodies and keep some healthy minions on the board.
So we'll have to see if Maryland decides to develop the smaller taunts in their hand or at the Tar Lord and kind of let the Rogue develop wider and wider onto the board to get the maximum value out of both of these brawls, because I think that's going to have to be the plan if they have any chance of making it through the onslaught of 5/5s that the Rogue, the Quest Rogue just inherently is able to do.
Oh boy, so this is... I thought for sure when we saw that high roll with the opening mulligan and then the draw into Gadgetzin Ferryman right away, that this game was all but over, but double brawls... The Tar Lord, like you said, is surprisingly good into this Rogue, and Maryland is going to be able to sustain for quite a while in this game. The question is, can they make the Rogue run out of threats? Because there's, what now, is it 1 Violet Teacher left? Or, no, that was last game. So they're both Violet Teachers left.
There's still at least a Violet Teacher left in the deck. We do not know if they are running 2.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. Will EPM kind of get baited by the Brawl and make a very, very large Edwin Van Cleef? Chooses not to, plays very, you know, relatively conservatively. And one of the interesting interactions with the Rogue Quest and the Edwin Van Cleef is Edwin Van Cleef will hit the board as a 5/5, and then the Battle Cry will go off. That combo will give him +2/+2 on top of the 5/5 body, so that is why we see a 9/9 Edwin Van Cleef here hitting the board.
Does decide to attack with Moreau, so is going to be allowing Moreau to be taken down by something weird like a Ravaging Ghoul into an Execute, but overall, he's still a 5/5 minion, so he's going to be
He packs a punch.
Yes, he does. And yeah, like you said, the way that interaction works is the Crystal Core counts as a board effect for the Rogue, and board effects do take place before combos or battle cries, so hits the board, buffs up to 5/5, then the combo activates and buffs it right up.
So very... You know, good outcome for the Brawl there, dodging both the Edwin Van Cleef and the Moreau's 50-50 chance to hit, make sure either of those would live.
Right.
So the lowly, I don't even know what that token is called.
He's a waiter, clearly, or...
Well, Moreau's not a card that we see all too often, a card we will be seeing more and more often over the course
Servant of
the
Moreau's,
weekends.
mate. We've got so many servants. Servant of Calamos. We'll call it a Servant of Moreau's. He's dressed for it anyway. Dressed to the nines like we are, but he's got a bow tie, which I'm pretty jealous of.
So Swashbuckler kind of come up. A Ravaging Ghoul picked up. Not exactly...
Wait a minute. 5... I don't know. So they don't have quite lethal yet, but it's getting really, really close on this turn.
It's getting very close between that South Sea deckhand and the Shadow Step.
Yeah.
So that would be a potential 10 extra damage. The Ferryman would make that 15, and that actually will be lethal with the hero power.
I totally forgot about the Ferryman. So yes, that is going to do it here this turn. The math does work out, and L'École Polytechnique is going to come out with this series over the University of Maryland. Oh my goodness, we're just going to see this one play out here. He figured out the math and is going to put it on display for us here. What an interesting game in which we only saw one of those brawls used, and in the end, I guess that high roll really was enough of a high roll after all. Even through all of the utility that was sitting in University of Maryland's hand, they were just able to get that board up and finish that through.
Yeah, no, not enough time to play all of those taunts, and they wanted to extend the game, get as much value out of that second brawl as possible, and they just didn't have the time to do it. All of the Shadow Step and the bounce back effects coming into the hands of EPM there, so just a very quick closeout to a very, very long series.
Yeah, and even going late game against the Rogue is such a tough ordeal. So that's just a bad matchup to queue into for University of Maryland there, to be left with the Warrior against the Rogue. If they had won that mirror that game before, that was the best shot they had, I think. So kudos to them for finding that matchup first.
Yeah, no, the Warrior giving them a little bit of trouble there, not being able to find the win with that, and just the matchups across the board were just very interesting and just long series, kind of hard to remember all of the games. We started off the series with an elemental mid-range paladin.
We did.
Versus the Warrior, and it just feels like so long ago.
All right, so we do have an interview over with excuse me, it's not a university, that is Polytech. What is that first word?
L'École Polytechnique de Montréal.
Thank you.
Hey, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, how are you doing there, Brio?
Hey guys, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, awesome. Congratulations here for winning that series. That was a long and hard-fought battle.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be through the round of you're through the round of 32? We didn't even bring this up on the air yet, but we'll bring it up now for you. This is a university that has won their earlier game today, moved on to the round of 32, and has now won this game, moving on to the round of 16. How does that feel, Brio?
Right now, it's more than a relief than anything else. I was so nervous just playing on stream, and for the first time, it's the biggest scene I ever played on. So I'm really happy, but really happy this is over too, because I was really nervous.
Yeah, you looked a little bit, but congratulations, able to bring it out there. So a couple questions we wanted to ask you. What kind of preparation did you do going into the journey to Ngoro, only having 2 days to prepare?
Yeah, only having 2 days and being at the end of my semesters, it was really hard to put a lot of practice in, but I got a couple of friends who helped me. But the main point is nobody knows what the meta is and what is good against what. Or I just went on Twitter, picked the 4 best deck I could find, and did the work.
Yeah, no, you played very, very well, and by yourself too. That is quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, you are missing Emmy Saihi, I believe is how you pronounce that, and Frank Shadow. Did they?
Yeah.
I know they're not here today. Did they help out at least with the list or your preparation at all, or was this pretty much a solo man show for you today?
Yeah, for this round, this was pretty much me and my other friends, but they helped me a lot during the regular season and around the previous playoffs. So they helped me a lot, that's for sure. And tomorrow, they'll be there tomorrow for the next round.
Oh, that's awesome. We will be looking forward to seeing you with the full complement of all of your brain power behind there. So congratulations, man. You are on to the round of 16. I believe the first official qualifier that we have for the round of 16 tomorrow. So that is fantastic. And you, good luck on the rest of the tournament. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
Man, that is just to sit down. All the hopes on your team are on you. All that pressure, and then you find some of these, those early games did not go so well for him. He was running into a couple bad draws. That's just so much pressure on Brio.
Yeah, but he played extremely well over the course of that game. Over the course of the series, a long series, he kept his composure, managed to pull it out in the wind. Great job to him, and I'm really happy and excited to see what the full team can bring out tomorrow.
Yeah, that is going to be super interesting. We do have another tweet sent in from you guys. This one is from Marky Salam. If you could only play one class for the rest of your life, what would you pick and why? Well, I'll go first because this was a really easy one for me. I am a hard rogue main. There is The reason I love Rogue so much is because it's very weird. All of these cards that you have, their classic set is just utility. Shadow Steps, all of these weird utility spells, and in any new set with Rogue, there's about a billion different ways that you can combo them. So that's always a lot of fun for me to try to figure out.
Yeah, for me, my top favorite classes would have to be the Shaman, the Druid, and the Rogue. But if I had to pick a single one class, it would end up being the Rogue, just because, as you said, there's so many versatilities. There's so much versatility in the base set, the classic set. There's so many cool spells that they keep adding. Each one of the expansions, you can play anything from the Jade variant, N'Zoth variant, Aggro, Miracle. There's just so many different types of decks, and you almost never get bored.
Your first love was Shaman, though.
It was
we do
Shaman.
have to keep that in mind.
And that was before Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem came out. I did have Golden Shaman before then, so, Shaman became the thing, and I kind of jumped off the bandwagon there for a little bit. But I've really been enjoying the Rogue and the Druid lately.
All right, so if you would like to have your tweet read out on air, and if you would like to get a Dalaran Flame card back just like Marky Salam did just there, tweet at us at Team Tespa. If your tweet gets read out on the air, you will be receiving that card back. Of course, you can always go to facebook.com/Team Tespa to do that as well. We will be getting around to more tweets later in the day. All right, so that is going to wrap it up, at least here for match number 3. We do have to let you guys know again that we are putting on this event in Santa Ana. The Esports Arena is going to be the live finals, top 8 onward, down all the way to the number 1 player of this tournament is going to be figured out at that time. So buy your tickets. 1 day is $12, 2 days is $20, and of course, just by buying those and attending, you get that Dalaran Flame card back. The easiest way in all the world to grab that.
Yeah, awesome card back. Really cool event, and there's just so much going on. It's going to be an awesome experience. Really wish I could go. Unfortunately, won't be able to attend, but
it's really tempting to fly back out here, isn't it?
that would be, an event to attend and make room for in your schedule if you have the opportunity to.
All right, so we are going to be taking a look at what we've got coming up next. We did see Rutgers over Columbia, Michigan over Miami, Ohio, and EPM over Maryland. But next, we are going to see Duke versus University of Florida, and that is going to be a very interesting matchup for us. Well, not for us. We're going to be tossing that back over the court, and that's admirable. So when we come back, we are going to be doing that, moving into match 4. So stick around. We'll be back in a few minutes, and we hope to see you then.